Let's get peppy. Welcome to PEP 141. That's PEP or Planet Extra podcast. It's an offshoot of Planet America on the ABC Australia, which you can see on Fridays at 8 p.m. on ABC News Channel or on Wednesdays at 9:30 on ABC TV. Or you can see us on iView on Facebook at ABC Planet America and on YouTube at the ABC In-Depth channel. On PEP, we cover all the stuff that's too nerdy for TV. If you're listening, you can also see this podcast on Facebook and YouTube, where you will see Mr. Dr. Pepper, Mr. Sir Dr. Pepper, if you don't mind.
No.
Dr. David Smith.
If I was offered a knighthood, I wouldn't accept it. And you know why?
Why is that?
Because I don't speak for any institution, especially not the ones that I work for, which is the United States Studies Centre at the University of Sydney. I'm very proud to work for both of those institutions. They're both great, but I do not speak for them. Don't try to institutionalise me.
Very smooth, Dave. While you are segueing so smoothly, why don't you segue into what you're grateful for?
I am grateful for Shamar Joseph.
Who?
So Shamar Joseph is this debutante or near debutante test cricketer for the West Indies. He debuted in the first test against Australia, got Steve Smith on his first ball that he bowled at test level. And then in the second test, led the West Indies to victory by 8 runs. It was an absolute classic. Seeing Josh Hazlewood there at the crease with hardly any runs left to make may bring back memories for some peppers of Craig McDermott in 1993 facing Courtney Walsh. So it was this test was an absolute classic. And Shamar Joseph, in just his second test, got 7 for 68 in the second innings. And that was suffering from what turned out to be a very badly damaged toe, courtesy of a ball from Mitchell Starc the day before. So he's doing this in absolute pain, although he didn't seem to be showing it at all. And that was the West Indies' first victory in Australia since 1997. And I think their first win over Australia at all since 2009. And for those of us who grew up watching cricket in the 80s, it is great to see the West Indies actually winning something again, because those West Indian teams that did not lose a series from 1980 to 1995, they are what got a lot of us into cricket. And in Australia in particular, like, we could not get enough of those West Indian teams. One way or another, they would be in Australia every couple of years. And, you know, people my age can remember those lineups very well, starting with that opening pair of Greenidge and Haynes.
Yep.
Never seen better openers since then, not even Langer and Hayden. Then Viv Richards would come in at number 3 and completely fuck you up. And then they had this really solid middle order, Richie Richardson a bit later on, but Gus Logie, who also fielded at insanely close distances, Larry Gomes, and then all these people who were in and out like Roger Harper. And that's before you get to the fast bowlers. So I was too young to experience the Holding, Croft, Roberts, Garner experience, although I think I got the tail end of Joel Garner. But when I was watching, it was Curtly Ambrose, Courtney Walsh. She was the first to get to 500 wickets, I think. Malcolm Marshall, who was originally underestimated by the Australians because he was a man of only normal height, but he was actually the best of all. And then people like Ian Bishop and Patrick Patterson, who were just incredibly fast. That's before we even get to Brian Lara, one of the best batsmen of all time. So, you know, the West Indies was absolutely epochal team. If you're too young to remember this and want to learn more, highly recommend a documentary called Fire in Babylon, which is about the West Indian team of that period and a little bit earlier. But anyway, thank you, Shamar Joseph. Great to see the West Indies winning again.
I have very fond memories of the West Indies as well from that era. I always used to really... I had a love-hate relationship with Viv Richards bowling.
Oh, yes.
Because when he came on, you'd say, oh, finally, Australia can score some runs here. Because when the fast bowlers were bowling, the strike rate was, or the run rate was like 1.8 or something.
Yeah.
And then Viv Richards came on and go, oh, finally some runs. And then he inevitably would take wickets with some shitty straight ball.
Yeah. It was great.
Yeah, it was great. I must say, I'm ashamed to say, I'm a huge cricket fan, but I'm ashamed to say I actually tuned out to this.
Oh, no.
Because I thought the West Indies are going to suck.
Yeah.
And I was wrong.
You were wrong.
I didn't realise how wrong I was until it was over. And I was like,
Yes.
oh, no, I missed this.
Yeah.
So that's all right. Next time, West Indies, I'm sorry. Next time I'll be there. That's a great one. That's a good one. My gratitude is for two people, for Ron Wyden
Yes.
and for J.Smith.
Okay.
Ron Wyden is the Senate Finance Committee chair. He's a Democrat. And Jason Smith.
Oregon?
That's the one. And Jason Smith is the House Ways and Means Committee chair. He's a Republican.
State unknown, at least to me.
For those, same here. For those who,
Man from nowhere.
yeah, look, it's you'd be forgiven for not paying much attention to Jason Smith. Until
Yes.
now, he was best known for being the guy who really struggled in Hunter Biden press conferences.
Oh, right.
Like he's the guy who all the real struggle gaffes come from. The guy who has no idea about his own material.
Yeah.
Who gets exposed by the press. Like these are their press conferences. They're in control of
Yes.
his press conference, and he always looks like a fool. Even James Comer looks good in his press conferences. That's how low the bar is, right? But Jason Smith just doesn't clear that bar.
Yeah.
Now, until now, I thought it's because he's an idiot.
Yep.
But now I'm starting to think maybe it's because he doesn't care. Maybe it's because he thinks this Hunter Biden thing is a joke.
Yes.
Because he's doing some good work. And this is why I'm grateful for. He and Ron Wyden have been working for the last 6 months on what could only be described as sensible legislation. I never thought I'd use that phrase again. They've been working. It's a very small deal. It's not jazzy. It's not gonna. It's not gonna seeing Twitter alight. It's an extension of the child tax credit.
Oh, yes.
And the child tax credit is $2,000 per child, and it was much more generous than that during COVID.
Yes.
And it greatly reduced child poverty at the time, but then they removed it after COVID.
Yes.
Right? Now it's not so generous. But what their deal does, they've just pushed forward a deal which is going to be voted on in the next week or so.
Yep.
Their deal speeds up the rate at which the child tax credit phases in. Because at the moment it phases in depending on your income.
Yep.
Right? It currently takes until you earn $34,000 a year for it to be fully phased in, the $2,000 per child. They're making it so that you only have to earn $14,000 a year before it fully phases in.
Yeah.
Needless to say, that's not going to be helping rich people.
Yep.
They're not even get the child tax credit. It's only going to be helping the working poor.
Yes.
Essentially. The average benefiting family will earn $1,100 per year more under the change. And the Centre on Budget and Policy Priorities estimates it's going to lift about 400,000 children out of poverty in its first year. There was also some tax benefits as well as part of this bill as well, but that's for the Republican side. It's going to allow businesses to deduct the cost of property that they buy faster. It will allow more favourable treatment of research and development expenses. These aren't problems. These are not bad tax cuts. Like, sometimes tax cuts are just giveaways.
Yeah.
This actually is useful. Like
Sensibly targeted.
Yeah, absolutely. Like they've actually done a good job. And how are they paying for it? Because it's not on the deficit. They're paying for it by removing a COVID tax concession that's now pointless, which is an employee retention bonus.
Wow.
So it's actually just good. It's good for Democrats, it's good for Republicans, and it's good for the deficit. So it's actually just a good piece of legislation. It's not groundbreaking, but it's positive.
Yes.
It might not get up. We'll find out.
I was going to say, so explain why it's not going to get up.
No, I think it might get up. It might not. We'll find out. Like people genuinely don't know because no one's talking about it because no one gives a shit.
Yeah.
Because it's just not getting people excited.
Yeah.
But
is it going to improve people's lives?
It's going. Yes.
Before the election?
Yes.
Not going to get up.
Okay. We'll see. Whether it gets up or not, I'm grateful to Jason Smith and Ron Wyden for trying.
Thanks, Jason Ron.
So there we go. Now we've got a lot of correspondence. In fact, we've got so much to get through. We're not going to finish.
Okay.
But, oh my God. Okay, so let's start with correspondence. Lots of correspondence today.
Okay.
The Church of Dino Jesus. I threw out that whole name. Has supplied an answer to your question last week.
Right, about Proclamation Day.
No. That's coming.
Oh.
The one before that about how much Australians spend in election campaigns.
Oh, right. How much is it?
Collectively, in the year leading up to the 2022 Australian election, all parties combined spent $418 million.
Okay.
Coalition was 132, Labor was 116, Palmer was 123.
Yeah.
That's all nationwide.
Yeah.
So
I've got to say, somewhat inflated by Palmer.
Yes.
Yeah.
But even with Palmer,
Yeah.
we didn't quite make it to Mike Bloomberg's 2-month primary campaign.
No.
but almost. We almost got there.
And I mean, like, that's about half of a Senate campaign in a competitive American state. Yeah. So, I mean, it's not nothing, obviously, but okay, good.
There's your answer.
Thank you very much for that.
The next answer, which you were asking about, was Proclamation Day.
Yes.
A lot of Proclamation Day correspondence, Dave.
Okay, good.
A lot of people want to talk about that.
Glad to hear it.
A lot of South Australians are viewers, apparently.
Oh, good. Our piping shrikes. Our pepping shrikes.
I'm sure they'll love that, whatever that means.
Yeah.
A lot of them said that they had no idea what it was until you mentioned it. So
okay.
You're informing even the South Australians out there.
I'm very glad to be of service.
It does seem to still be in the calendar. That's a lot of people have said that.
Yep.
Rather anonymously, apparently.
Right.
The Speedy Tree, some interesting names here. The Speedy Tree says,
yes,
the Proclamation public holiday got moved to the 26th. Unlike the rest of Australia, in South Australia, the public holiday on 26th of the 12th is for Proclamation Day, not Boxing Day. I don't know if that's true. That's what he says.
That's just robbery, isn't it?
Although Michael, well, wait for robbery. Michael
yeah.
says that Boxing Day now, Proclamation Day, is not a public holiday in South Australia anyway. I don't know if that's true or not. That's what Michael reckons.
Wow.
Michael also said that even though Proclamation Day is on the 26th, the ceremony is still on the 28th. Right. And Elise backs that up. She says only a handful of politicians and state dignitaries go to the Proclamation Day ceremony at the old Gumtree Park every December 28th.
Yep.
No one else.
Of course, because you're not even getting a day off for it.
She says the park is mainly a dog park now with a bent tree and a plaque.
Yes.
Wayne says that Queensland has Separation Day.
Yes.
And that's the 10th of December.
Yep.
And Listen to Pumpkin Music says the Buffalo replica at Wiggly Reserve, apparently that you mentioned, no longer exists.
Oh, no.
Coming up to the 5th anniversary of its demolition, apparently.
Oh, well, why don't you just demolish my whole childhood?
You should go and pay tribute, mate. Like lay a wreath.
Yeah.
Anyway, I haven't bothered to fact check any of those because
it's all going to be true.
This is not Planet Proclamation
South
Day.
Australians are notoriously honest.
Of course they are.
Thank you, our pepping shrikes.
So there we go. Question time, Dave.
Yes.
Richard wants to know who's in charge of the Michigan Republican Party. So, Dave, let's observe the sting.
It's the Michigan Corner.
Okay, thanks for that, Richard, because I was thinking about this morning when I was at the animal hospital watching the vet shaving my cat's ass. So our cat, Poppy, has very long fur, and cats with long fur, you need to trim the fur around their backside every now and then to stop shit from getting stuck in it.
Oh, dear.
And let's just say the Michigan Republican Party has been letting the fur on its ass grow wild since 2020, and it is now so full of shit that it's going to take more than one trip to the vet and an electric razor, I can tell you that. We're talking machetes and chainsaws are going to be needed to clear the path to the Michigan Republican Party's anus.
They're going to need a car wash, Dave.
Yeah. It's an absolute mess. Okay, just a little bit of background here. The Michigan Republican Party has traditionally been a pretty strong organisation. Michigan's one of the original homes of the Republican Party. The dominant strand of Michigan Republicanism has often been described as moderate. I'm not sure if moderate's the right word. I'd say it's more conservative but pragmatic.
Okay.
You think of people like George Romney, who was the governor, or the Milliken dynasty. A lot of it, as I've mentioned before, the kind of Dutch Calvinist rural tradition in Michigan has a big influence over the Republican Party. Now, the strength of the Republican Party is a very important variable in Michigan politics. So for most of the last few decades, Republicans have held the House of Representatives in Michigan, even when they haven't had the governor's mansion. So I think that when I was there, so the very popular Democratic governor, Jennifer Granholm, who would have been a presidential candidate if she hadn't been born in Canada, crushed her opponent, Dick DeVos of DeVos fame.
I have to jump in.
Yeah.
For those who are interested in Jennifer Granholm, she was on a dating show in 1978. It's on YouTube.
I did not know. No.
You can look it up.
Oh, that's okay. I did not. Was it a Canadian dating show?
Not sure. I think it might be American.
Okay.
Anyway, I had to jump in for that.
Anyway, but the Republicans held the House, and when Granholm was term limited out in 2010, Rick Snyder, Republican, became the governor, and I'm not sure when Republicans got the trifecta, but they were just very, very strong in Michigan. And this was one of the reasons why Trump won, was actually the strength of the Republican Party itself. Very organizationally strong there. The Republican Party since 2020 has gone completely haywire in Michigan. And I think it was 2020 that did it to them. We talked before if you remember the last episode of 2020, I talked about the Michigan Republican Party for about an hour because Michigan was the one state where there was actually a certification crisis beginning in Wayne County, which every county in Michigan has 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats on their certification board. And the Republicans, despite being about 10% of the population of Wayne County, are half of the electoral board and didn't want to certify for a few hours. Then there was leading up to the state certification. Once again, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats. One of the Republicans was openly not going to certify the election, which could have led to a deadlock. Fortunately, a more traditionally minded Michigan Republican, Aaron Langeveld, did his job. He now is persona non grata in the Michigan Republican Party. Ever since then, it has really gone off the deep end. Sorry, I'm running out of metaphors to describe exactly how bad it has gotten.
We're still at cat's asses, don't worry.
So in 2022... Christina Caramo ran for Michigan Secretary of State as part of the, what did they call themselves? Secretaries of State for America, or whatever. Basically, the people who were promising to deliver the 2024 election.
I'll tell you what they didn't call themselves, elected.
Yes. She lost by 14 points. 14 points. I mean, Gretchen Whitmer won by a lot. She only won by 12 points. Caramo lost by 14 points and refused to accept the result of the election. She has still not conceded. Anyway, she leveraged that fantastic performance to become chair of the Michigan Republican Party in 2023. It took 3 rounds of voting and quite a long time, but she got there. She became the chair, promising to turn things around and get the trifecta back within the next 2 cycles. Because in 2022, remember, there was a Republican trifecta for most of the last 10 years. There's now a Democratic trifecta in Michigan, which is extremely unusual and gives you an idea of the depths that the Republican Party is at the moment. So she, by the way, defeated another failed election denier in that race, so it wasn't exactly top draw. But by the end of last year, even Michigan Republicans were beginning to realise that things had gone very badly wrong.
So just quickly, my memory might deceive me, but isn't the reason for that trifecta switch because they changed the districting so there's no more gerrymander?
That's part of it, yes.
So it's not like it would necessarily be easy for them to reverse that trifecta.
Oh, God, no.
Yeah, okay, go on.
No, they're in all kinds of trouble. So that trouble really became evident at the Mackinac Leadership Conference last year, which when you read about this in the paper, the New York Times keeps referring to it as the revered Mackinac Leadership Conference. I don't know why they call it that, but it is something that happens every year. It's been happening for a long time. Big event on the Republican calendar. Usually in the year before an election, it would attract major election candidates. It didn't this year. There were speakers who just didn't show up. Attendance was way down. And it turned out that the State Republican Committee had to borrow $110,000 to pay for their keynote speaker, who was Jim Caviezel of Passion of the Christ fame. And what's the name of that movie that is...
Sound of Freedom?
Sound of Freedom. That's right. Sound of Freedom. The child trafficking movie. So they paid $110,000 for him to speak to an audience that, that probably works out to more than $1,000 per person.
Yeah.
In the audience. So they're in. I think in the end it was the financial stuff that got them. Like, no matter how much of a Yahoo in Michigan, there's one thing that you're not going to tolerate, and that's being in the red. So anyway,
ironically,
it was at the Mackinac conference. Apparently, a plan for a mutiny was hatched. They enlisted Pete Hoekstra, who is a very big name in the Michigan Republican Party, a long-serving member of the House, not one of our favourites on PEP.
No.
So he beat her in an election which she is refusing to acknowledge the result of.
Of course.
She has said that it was against the party's state bylaws. Now, no one quite seems capable of sorting this out. So Pete Hoekstra he's the chair now, but he doesn't have access to the party's finances, doesn't have access to their email account. Apparently, this is solely controlled by Christina Caramo. Caramo claims she's still the legal chair. And the National Republican Committee is refusing to intervene. How great is that?
Wow.
Even though the national chair is Ronna Romney McDaniel, who is from Michigan, who's the daughter of the former governor of Michigan, even though she got rid of her, or not daughter, niece. What relationship is she to George Romney?
She's niece.
Sorry, not daughter, niece.
Yes.
Although she dropped Romney from her name
did.
because that was displeasing to Trump. She's refusing to intervene. So the Republican National Committee just had its midwinter conference and they refused to acknowledge either Christina Caramo or Pete Hoekstra as the Michigan delegate.
So the answer is no one.
Yeah, the answer is no one at the moment. This is how fucked up it is. Trump has even endorsed Hoekstra as the chair.
Yeah.
Like he saw that this was getting a bit embarrassing and he truthed out like, oh, Pete Hoekstra will be a great chair. Pete Hoekstra was Trump's ambassador to the Netherlands. But even that has not forced the Republican National Committee's hand. They are not recognizing anyone. And so, the answer is it's a complete stalemate. Nobody is in charge.
Okay, I have a statement and a question.
Yes.
The statement is, before those who are watching the podcast would have seen I was typing away at something.
Yep.
I was on a mission to find out if Jim Caviezel earned less making Sound of Freedom than he made speaking to 100 people in the Michigan Republican Party.
Yeah.
And the answer is that sadly he was paid at $1.5 million for Sound of Freedom. Sorry about that. It's so disappointing. That's a statement. The question is,
yes,
this is a big deal, isn't it?
It
because
is a big deal.
Michigan could be the state in the election.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Michigan is likely to be the pivotal state. Because you would have to feel if the Democrats lose Wisconsin, then they've lost the election. If the Republicans can't win Arizona, they've probably lost the election. Michigan and Pennsylvania are probably really the two pivotal states along with Nevada. So it's not only is it pivotal, given how much Biden won it by last time, it is really up for grabs now. And there's a few reasons for that. One of them is, and you can tell that Biden's team is becoming increasingly alarmed by this, the Arab American vote in Dearborn is seriously turning against him.
Oh, yeah.
So there has been a lot of reporting on this now. John Zogby is not everybody's favourite pollster, but he knows Arab Americans very well, especially in Michigan. He did a poll finding that Arab American support for Biden had plummeted from 59% to 18% since October 7th. I think that the Arab American population of Michigan is around 2.5%. The Arab American Alliance claims that the population of the Michigan electorate, that is of Arab background, is 5%. That might be a little bit on the high side, but it's significant.
Yeah.
And bearing in mind, Biden won it by 2.8% last time. The Washington Post reported just this week about the abandoned Biden movement in Dearborn, which, that not all Arab Americans are going to abandon him. And certainly the people who were interviewed made clear they think that Trump's even worse.
Yeah.
But Gaza is a massive issue for them.
Totally.
And, they've described, there was one interviewee described it as this is the first, second and third most important issue in the election. And for them, it's not worth supporting Biden. And they're saying it's not just that we're not going to turn up for him. We will actively campaign against him. Now, okay, that might change by the time we get to the actual election, especially if you look at what Biden did today, announcing sanctions on settlers in the West Bank. He's trying to turn it around. But the point is, Michigan is really up for grabs in a way that it wouldn't have appeared to be even 6 months ago.
Yeah. I was going to say, on the other side, the UAW endorsement would be helping
endorsement
as
of
well.
Biden is a big deal.
Yeah.
And you can tell by the way that Trump is reacting to that that it's a big deal. That's potentially very significant. But Michigan is really up for grabs.
Yeah.
And if the state Republican Party, which as I can't remember who was explaining it, but there was some veteran Republican explained it very well. State Republican parties are very important clearinghouses for nationally given donations. So somewhere like Michigan, there'll be huge amounts of national money pouring into it, but from people who don't know where to direct it. The state party directs it. It's also the state party is what provides the volunteers. And they are very, very important in elections. But from people I know in Michigan in 2016 were just saying the number of Trump volunteers everywhere was one of the big factors that you could really notice in that election that wasn't there in 2020. If they can't mobilize that again in 2024, then they could be saying goodbye to a state that they could win.
While we're talking about the election, I wasn't going to bring this up, but this is a big story. I mentioned this on the show on Plain America. RFK, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is currently on 2 state ballots at the moment, which is the reason why I've said that I wasn't too worried about his threat. He could influence the vote in New Hampshire.
Yes, yeah.
He's on the ballot in New Hampshire and in Utah. He's trying to get on more, but this week, it came out that he may join the Libertarian Party and run with them. Now, if he does, he's on 50 state ballots.
Yes.
He's on every single ballot.
That is a potentially huge...
That could be the decisive factor in the election, more than anything else.
Yeah. It would also, I mean, in some senses, that would be the end of the Libertarian Party. That would be the end of
he's not libertarian.
Of any pretense that they're, principled. So I don't know whether they would actually select him, because apart from vaccination, I don't think he would agree with them about just about anything.
Yeah.
And even on vaccination, most libertarians would probably be anti-vaccination mandates, but they wouldn't necessarily be into the kinds of theories that he's into. So, but yeah, if he is running as a libertarian candidate, that would be hugely influential.
That would be massive. Anyway, a few updates. Honestly, there's so much housework we got to do.
Yes, yeah.
I feel like, this might be my obsession, but I feel like we shouldn't let this story pass without comment. I haven't mentioned it on the show. I haven't mentioned it on PEP. We're still waiting to hear whether the DC Court of Appeals will allow Trump's immunity claim about the January 6th trial to hold up. It should be any day now. Okay. But just to remind you, Trump's people were claiming that if a president is not impeached and they commit an official act, it doesn't matter how many crimes those official acts involve, they should be immune. If it's an official act and they weren't impeached. That's their position.
Yep.
Now, I don't think that's a very good position.
No.
It seems extreme.
Yep.
But not extreme enough for Trump, because a few weeks back he posted this in all caps. I'll read this way. A president of the United States must have full immunity, without which it would be impossible for her to properly function. Any mistake, even if well-intended, would be met with almost certain indictment by the opposing party at term end. Even events that cross the line must fall under total immunity, or it will be years of trauma trying to determine good from bad. There must be certainty. Example: you can't stop police from doing the job of strong and effective crime prevention because you want to guard against the occasional rogue cop or bad apple. Sometimes you just have to live with great but slightly imperfect. All presidents must have complete and total presidential immunity, or the authority and decisiveness of a president of the United States will be stripped and gone forever. Hopefully this will be an easy decision. God bless the Supreme Court. Okay, now firstly...
Do you remember how the concept of 140 characters used to get mocked?
Oh, such a good concept.
Why. That's why it was 140 characters.
Oh, such a good concept.
Yes.
Firstly, it's not the Supreme Court hearing his case at the moment. It's the DC Court of Appeals. Just a little side. Secondly, what the fuck? His new position is that no matter what a president does, they should be immune. Even if they just walk through the streets of DC with a flamethrower, just setting people alight, they should be immune, according to Trump.
So if Biden ordered a drone strike on Mar-a-Lago, immunity.
If Biden went up to Mar-a-Lago with an ice pick and just stabbed Trump repeatedly in the eye sockets, immunity.
If it's performance of official duties.
No, he didn't say official duties.
Oh, right.
That's my point.
Oh, okay.
That's why he's saying just full immunity. Don't want official duties, full immunity.
Okay, wow.
That's what I'm saying. He's taken it much further than his own counsel did, right?
Okay.
And he says even if they, quote, cross the line, they should be immune. So that's his definition, cross the line.
Yep.
So by his definition, he's saying even when they go too far, they haven't gone too far. That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
And if they don't have those powers, then it would be traumatic and impossible for them to function, apparently. They must be able to ice pick each other in the eye
Traumatic
sockets.
and impossible to function. Imagine if that was part of American politics.
It's like according to him, they must have the power to commit infinite crimes or they can do nothing. There is no in between. It's either infinite crimes or nothing. This is not a person who I feel is temperamentally suited to being the most powerful person in the world. I want to emphasize,
Yep.
I don't think he'll be a dictator.
No.
I like we've talked about this.
No.
I don't think he'll be a dictator, but I'm not saying he'll go around committing murder sprees.
No.
but,
Doesn't have the attention span.
no, he'll probably be chained to the phone like he was in his first term. Yeah. But this is not a good legal precedent to set.
No, it's not.
It really isn't. And by the way, I'll tell you what he will do.
Yeah.
He might not be a dictator, but look at the second part of that tweet or that post about the police. Example, you can't stop police from doing the job of strong and effective crime prevention because you want to guard against the occasional rogue cop or bad apple. Sometimes you just have to live with great but slightly imperfect. He might do that. He might push for laws that give police total impunity.
Yes, yeah.
That's actually something he genuinely believes in.
Totally,
That's not just a 1 second tweet.
No.
He's been talking about that for decades.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
That is a subject that's near and dear to his heart. And it's ironic, actually, given how fixated he is on FBI abuse, that he wants to give the police impunity.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Obviously, only cares when it affects him. But needless to say, I don't think that's a good policy.
No.
And I'm concerned about that policy. And by the way, if you think I'm scaremongering, this is what he said in New Hampshire last week. We will restore law and order in our communities. I'm going to indemnify through the federal government all police officers and law enforcement officials throughout the United States from being destroyed by the radical left for taking strong actions against crime. It's his official policy.
Yes. Which, by the way, is one of the many things that he actually can't do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he can try. Look, I'm going to be doing a lot of policy segs from now on.
Yes,
Consider that one the first. They'll mostly be about Trump because at this point in time, Joe Biden hasn't announced basically zero policies.
Yes, yeah.
But when he starts, I'll cover him as well. Anyway,
But
that's
just
not
on that police point, there are 20,000 law enforcement agencies in the United States.
Yeah.
Nearly all of them are not at the level of the federal government.
No, but he does control the FBI.
Yes.
He does control the federal police. He can give them impunity.
Yeah. But he was talking about wanting to give
I know.
all police
Yes, he was.
indemnity. No, he only wants to give the ones who've been harassing him immunity. I don't think so.
That is true.
Yes.
Okay. Next update. So do you have anything to say about that before I move on? No. I'm just so rushing. Georgia update. Fani Willis's hearing with the judge about her treatment of her prosecutor, Nathan Wade, set for February 15. There's a correspondence here. Jeremy points out on Nathan Wade's wage, $250 an hour for a lawyer may appear steep, but it's actually incredibly cheap. Paralegals at peak US law firms will be billed out at $500 an hour.
There you go.
Senior lawyers will be on $2,000 an hour. That's fair enough, although the issue in his case is probably why he was hired in the first place.
Yep.
And the sheer number of billable hours she gave him as well. But anyway, that's not why I brought it up. The reason I brought it up was because we learned something about Wade's appointment this week.
What was that?
From a preview of a book. A book's called Find Me the Votes by Michael Isikoff and Daniel Klaidman.
Oh, yeah.
This has nothing to do with the affair.
Yeah.
Wade was not Willis's first choice.
Oh.
He was the guy, though, who agreed to the job. Right. She asked a bunch of people first, and they didn't agree.
Okay.
The first person she approached was Roy Barnes, a former Georgia governor and one of the state's top lawyers.
Yep.
He turned it down. She approached another highly respected lawyer and former federal prosecutor, Gabe Banks.
Yep.
He turned it down. We don't know how many people she approached before she got to Wade.
Right, yeah.
Why did they turn her down? This is why I brought this up. One of the main reasons seems to be expressed by Roy Barnes in this book. This is a quote from Roy Barnes.
What does Roy say?
Hypothetically speaking, do you want a bodyguard following you around for the rest of your life?
Yeah, okay.
Now, that is a smart take from Barnes, I think.
Yes, yeah.
And it's not surprising, but it's also incredibly depressing.
It is, yes.
That whether Trump's done it on purpose or not, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's say it's not on purpose. I don't know. Maybe it is.
Yeah.
Him and his crazy fanboys have essentially terrorized their way into a position of legal advantage.
Yes.
And this is the kind of situation that will become worse the longer Trump's a political figure. It erodes a country's political culture. And when people ask me, my concerns about Trump. I don't talk about dictatorship.
Yes, yeah.
I talk about that kind of thing.
Yes, yeah,
Like
absolutely.
eroding the culture.
Yep.
It's anyway, and so I thought that was a really telling quote. So
Yes.
I wanted to bring that up. Another update, an abortion update. In Mississippi, they're trying to get a ballot initiative up to allow abortion.
Mm-hmm.
There's a problem though. You can no longer hold ballot initiatives in Mississippi. The reason for that is that current law requires signatures for ballot initiatives to be collected in all 5 districts. They redistricted Mississippi in 2021. There's now 4 districts.
Wow.
And it says 5 districts in the legislation. So they're trying to pass legislation to amend that language and allow ballot initiatives again. But the thing is, as part of that legislation, Republicans keep on insisting that there's a little rider that you can't have a ballot initiative about abortion. That's not going down well at the moment in Mississippi. Let's see what happens. They're still trying, but we'll see.
I mean, Mississippi it's interesting because that would be like, of all the states in the union, you'd expect that would be the one where an abortion ban might survive.
Well, why are they trying to stop it then?
Yeah.
I'm not
saying
their actions speak for themselves.
I'm not saying it would, but it would probably be the most likely one.
Yeah, fair enough.
But this does not express confidence at all.
Final update, Yemen update. We're now past 35 attacks by the Houthis, and they actually hit a ship this week with a missile. It was a product tanker belonging to the Marshall Islands, and they caught fire. Don't think anyone was hurt, though. Got some correspondence about the Houthis. Just inaccurate, points out that it's a bit of a trade-off for the Houthis. He said the light, cheap drones that I mentioned last week don't actually have the explosive power to really damage or sink a giant cargo ship.
Right, yes.
The biggest risk being damage to the cargo crew if it hits them directly. To actually damage the cargo ships, the Houthis need to use their larger and more expensive anti-ship missiles. But because of their size and logistical footprint, they're far more vulnerable to airstrikes than the lighter drone operations.
Right, yes.
And that is, in fact, what we found. The Americans keep taking out missiles on the ground.
Yes.
Although this week they did take out a ground control station and 10 attack drones as well. Justin also makes the point that if the goal of the campaign is merely on interrupting the kill chain on the larger, more threatening anti-ship missiles, he said that's a goal that is potentially achievable as opposed to just ending all attacks with drones and all the rest of it. Luke makes the point that the true cost of shooting these missiles to the US is not the cost of the missile, it's supply.
Yep.
The US produces less than 200 each year of those missiles, he says. They need to save some for a potential war in Taiwan.
Okay.
Which is a fair point. Some more info as well about the topic, about the shipping cost of these Houthis attacks. According to Brimer, a London shipbroker, over the recent 30-day period, which ended, I think, about a week ago that they surveyed, 517 ships steered clear of the Red Sea through the Cape of Good Hope. 212 went through the Red Sea, which is the opposite of what it was in November, essentially. So those 517 ships represent about a quarter of all container shipping capacity in the world.
Right.
And they had to add 2 weeks to their trip, which is an additional $1 million each. And on the off chance the Houthis actually sunk one of those ships, if they went through the Red Sea, they're worth about $1 billion with their cargo. Also on the legal side of things, if we assume Biden has a war powers resolution justification for the Houthi strikes, we talked about this last week, if he's considered self-defense, which I think it probably would be, then he still only has a 60-day limit before he needs congressional permission. Now, that takes him to early March if you count the start date as the first missile, January 11. But they actually start intercepting missiles in the Red Sea in October. So the 60-day period might already be over.
Yep.
There are potential other legal justifications they could turn to, like the 1952 Mutual Defense Assistance Agreement between the US and Israel. But this is all theoretical because who cares about the actual law? No one. LOL. Isn't that nice? More developments during the week. Europe is getting more involved. The UK announced sanctions with the US against 4 Houthi leaders, whatever that means. And more importantly, the European Union's announced a full naval mission next month in the Red Sea. They're not attacking Houthis. It's only a defensive mission, intercepting missiles. They've got 7 nations involved, including Germany, Belgium, France, Italy, and Greece. So I imagine that will help out somewhat. Finally, I want to address a point of yours from last week, which I forgot to at the time because you said something else. And I walked out of the podcast and said, shit, I wanted to argue with you about that.
What's that?
So I'll argue now. You're making a point that if you're worried about the cost of shipping, your response should be just end the war in Gaza. That's why they're doing it. They're doing it to stop the war in Gaza. So just end the war in Gaza.
I think that would be more productive than pointless bombing.
No, I understand that. I understand that argument. But what I want to say was just that, I'm sure you're going to acknowledge this, that it's not necessarily a great strategy to be simply conceding to terrorists if you don't like their attacks. Generally speaking. Now, I know this is pretty gentle on the scale of terrorism. It's pretty let's call it code blue, maybe code green.
Yes,
It's not yellow, orange, or red or anything like that. But the fact is they are trying to use violence to achieve political aims. That is terrorism.
So what you should do is use more violence that will encourage more terrorists.
I'm not saying that's the answer either.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that that it might be a nice idea to come up, like sanctions are a form of consequence.
Thing is,
some kind of consequence.
Presumably, ending the war in Gaza is a policy aim anyway.
Yeah. Look, I'm not saying you should keep on fighting in Gaza forever to thwart the Houthis to teach them a lesson. I'm just saying that if the Houthis were, if they were bombing ships, if they were sending missiles to ships to try and get Israel to nuke Gaza, you wouldn't go, well, why don't you just nuke Gaza? Then you can use your ships. The reason why it seems like a nice thing to do is because you agree with their aims. If you didn't agree with their aims, you wouldn't suggest following through with their aims, right?
I've lost the thread of this hypothetical, Chaz.
The thread is that the answer to a even pissy terrorist group doing terrorist activity is not to just give them what they want. If you are going to give them what if you're going to do it, then fine, do it. But ideally there is some kind of sanction for this kind of activity, even if it's not missiles.
Yeah, but I suppose my point is that it's not that you'd be ending the war in Gaza because that's what they want.
Yes.
This is a manifestation
I understand.
of regional anger and part of their legitimacy comes from harnessing that. What I'm saying is if you bring the war in Gaza to a close, that's more likely to end this kind of violence than anything that you can actually do to the Houthis.
That's probably true.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway. Now we've opened this can. Let's keep on going.
Okay.
ICJ. We were talking about this last week. This is the International Court for Justice. I'll introduce it and I'll let you go. Okay. Genocide Convention defines genocide as acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. It's a very specific definition, so I always want to get on the board right at the beginning. It's not just war crimes, okay? If this was war crimes that Israel being prosecuted for, they'd be in the International Criminal Court, not the International Court of Justice. The most important thing about this is that at no point in time, because I was just allay this confusion, was this ever about getting a conviction in the short term, okay? There is no chance. Impossible to do that. Proving genocide is horrendously difficult. It almost never happens. You got to prove intent, which is extremely hard to do. And the standard of proof in the ICJ is super high. In Bosnia versus Serbia 2007, the ICJ said, for a pattern of conduct to be accepted as evidence of its existence, they're talking about the pattern of genocide, it would have to be such that it could only point to the existence of such an intent. That is, genocidal intent must be the only inference that could reasonably be drawn from the acts in question. If they can come up with any excuse whatsoever, that does not clear the bar for genocide in the ICJ, okay? To build that case takes years, 4-5 years, right? So what South Africa were trying to do was to get a preliminary emergency ruling for Israel to cease all military operations, a preliminary ruling. To get that, they just need to show it's plausible that genocide is occurring in Gaza. To quote the ICJ, they would need to show the existence of a real and imminent risk of irreparable prejudice to the rights protected under the Genocide Convention. Much lower standard of proof, okay? So to give you an example, in 2019, Gambia took Myanmar to the ICJ against Myanmar, saying they didn't prevent and punish acts of genocide against the Rohingya people. 2 months later, the ICJ issued an order to Myanmar to prevent and punish any further acts of atrocity and preserve evidence related to the case and submit regular reports. Oral arguments for the actual case are scheduled in May 2024. That was 2019. Okay, so 5 years later. That's the kind of thing South Africa was looking for. Is Israel even bound by this? Let's just get on the table to begin with. Israel's not a member of the ICC, but it did sign the Genocide Convention in 949, which is the source of the ICJ case. Mm-hmm. They did not sign the Rome Accord, which actually created the court. So it's a bit of a grey area.
Right.
But at least so far, Israel is observing them, which is good.
Yep.
We'll see if they respond to the rulings of the court. Either way, it definitely would ramp up pressure on both Israel and their allies, like America, if the ICJ ordered a ceasefire. And finally, for those saying, what about Hamas? Yes, it's true. You could argue Hamas has at least assisted any potential genocide by refusing to let Palestinian civilians shelter in their hundreds of miles of defensive tunnels and by hiding near churches, hospitals, schools, etc. That's obviously using their civilians as human shields. But Hamas is not a state. They're not covered by the ICJ. And as we'll get to eventually, the court had a few things to say about them anyway. So that's all introduction.
Yep.
Dave, can you take it away from there about the cases of the ICJ how it was conducted? Don't look at me like that.
Not really, no.
No? Okay, we just talk.
You can do that. Look, my overall feeling about this is that a legal process is never a substitute for a political process.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that legal processes are pointless, but looking at this, it just seemed like a bit of theatre that the idea of getting an injunction on what's going on in Gaza, that seemed like it were, that did not seem to be in the realm of political reality. I've actually found myself agreeing with the Australian government. Now, the Australian government said, we want a political solution.
Yeah.
Not all. I don't know what they've said since then, and I don't want to misrepresent the Australian government, but they weren't immediately getting on board with this legal approach. They said we need a political solution instead. Now, I think it's very easy to be cynical about that, and yes, they didn't want to get pinned down one way or the other.
Yep.
But whether or not they were being sincere about it, I think that's correct. There is only going to be a political solution. I would recommend an interview by Mahmoud Mamdani in The Nation very recently, where he was talking about the whole human rights process of going after human rights perpetrators.
Yep.
And he was saying if you think about human rights abuses in terms of perpetrators rather than beneficiaries, you're never going to actually understand what the origins of human rights abuses are. And he said, the irony is he says it was actually South Africa that came up with the political solution, which was changing the entire political system, right? What they had in South Africa wasn't a legal solution. It was a political solution. Now, there was a legal process that went along with that, but it was something that looked very different from normal legal processes. It was the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. There are real ways in which legal attempts to get at human rights abuses can go wrong. I recently read Gérard Prunier's book called Africa's World War, which I highly recommend. I think it was...
Does that go on the list?
Yeah. Africa's World War was the name of the American edition of it. I think the original title was From Genocide to Continental War. So it was following basically the Congo Civil War all the way from its origins in the Rwandan genocide all the way to the mid-2000s. And he makes this very good and very bleak point about the pursuit of genocidaires in Rwanda, where he said if that process was to mean anything to Rwandans, it would have had to have taken place quickly. There basically would have had to have been high-profile executions of high-profile people, then they could have moved on. But that's not how a legal process works, right? That's antithetical to a legal process. You don't want a legal process where you're just like, okay, let's hang these people quickly in order to bring political closure to this. That's not how it works. So what happened with this legal process of going after genocidaires? It happened in Arusha in Tanzania. It went on for years and years and years, and it generated a lot of resentment because the conditions that the alleged genocidaires, were being held in Arusha were substantially better than the conditions that a lot of people were living in Rwanda and in refugee camps around Rwanda. And the fact that this process wasn't brought to a quick close was something that the RPF, which became Rwanda's government, used very opportunistically to justify military actions, mainly in the Congo as well as in other places, that led to hundreds of thousands of more deaths. That because of the fact that the international community hadn't done anything to intervene in the genocide, to its shame, then to its further shame, it also did nothing when the Rwandan government basically just started going after its political enemies in other East African countries, also at the cost of hundreds of thousands of lives. Now, I'm not saying that is the same thing. I'm just trying to make the point that a legal process is no substitute for a political process, and what is clearly needed here is a political solution. I don't have the political solution, but that was just my immediate feeling as soon as I saw this going on.
First of all, let me just note for the viewers and the listeners that the Nation article that Dave refers to is going to be in the blurb, both in the podcast and in the videos. If you look in the show notes and underneath the videos, you'll find them there. And this will go into the book list, which will not be available on the podcast, but is going to be in the blurb underneath the videos. All the books that Dave's recommended for the past X years,
4 years,
yes, is on that book list. So go have a look. So there's some amazing books, and if I was literate, I would no doubt read some of them. Okay, no, I actually think, strangely enough, I think that the court might agree with you to a certain extent because their verdict was quite a political verdict.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah.
And quite sensible in its way. Which we're going to get to in a second.
And let me just clarify, I'm not bashing the law. I'm not bashing international law. I just think it's got really severe limitations in this case.
No, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what I might do is I might go through the case.
Okay.
And you can jump in anytime you want.
Sure.
Because I'll be sort of making comment as I go.
Yep.
Okay. So first of all, we've got there was a number of items that South Africa were arguing under. First of all, obviously, the first piece of evidence for genocide was obviously, bear in mind, they need to show intent, is the mass killings of Palestinians, obviously. They cited the death toll. At this point in time, it's 26,000 killed, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. Israel says 9,000 of them were militants. Who knows if that's true or not? We got no idea. Another 8,000 are missing, so they might also be dead. That balances out the militants, if that's there. We don't know. It's a lot. It's a lot. 70% of women and children, that's a lot. There's also incredible destruction in Gaza, obviously. Apparently, by the 29th of October, there were 6,000 bombs a week falling, including hundreds of 2,000-pound bunker buster bombs, they call them, each with a lethal radius of 360 meters. I have a strange thought about this, which might seem counterintuitive.
Yes.
But from a legal point of view, I actually think you could flip those facts around in a genocide trial to say, how many bombs in total then? Hundreds of thousands of bombs? Possibly millions of bombs? They killed 25,000 people in total so far? Let's say 33,000. Let's take the high end.
Yep.
From many hundreds of thousands of bombs.
Yes.
How bad are those bombs? Right? The fact that there's so many bombs killing, we're talking basically 10 bombs per death.
Yeah.
I think is evidence they're not trying to kill these people. If they were trying to kill as many Palestinians as they possibly could, they'd be able to kill more than 1/10 of a person per bomb. Like now, that sounds like a callous thing to say, but I mean just from like when you're arguing it, remember the intent argument.
Yes,
you have to show there's no other possible explanation.
Yes, yeah.
Right. Anyway, but so that's just saying. By the way, Israel didn't argue that. No. That's just something that just occurred to me when I saw it. I just thought, well, hang on. Anyway, but when you get past the legal technicalities,
yes,
you can see what the issue is here. in my view, there's no way you can show that their only aim with bombing is to kill a bunch of Palestinians, because there's always a Hamas guy around.
Yes.
But morally, do they really need to go as far as they have to kill Hamas? Could there not have been more targeted attacks?
Yeah.
Did you need to have hundreds of thousands of bombs? Could you not have used troops a couple of times?
Yeah.
Like the famous Al Shifa hospital example, where they went in with troops rather than bombs.
Yes.
Couldn't have they done that more? All right, now, that's not going to get you a genocide conviction.
No.
Conviction, but that is potentially going to get you a war crime conviction.
Yes.
And it's also morally impugnable.
Yes.
Which is the important bit.
Yeah.
It's go on. Yeah.
This is something I thought about from time to time as well. Genocide is basically the worst thing that you can accuse someone of, but there's a lot of bad stuff.
Yeah, totally.
That is not genocide.
Yeah.
There's a lot of terrible, awful stuff that is not genocide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've got a quote from Graham Wood from The Atlantic, who's a pretty good writer, by the way, which illustrates this. I mean, it's just one example, but still. I recently met an Israeli who said his son, an infantryman in the first waves of ground forces in Gaza, had called him to report seeing little violence up close, because as soon as anyone fired on them, airstrikes were called in and the source of the resistance was apparently killed. I would not have this soldier needlessly exposed to danger, but the cost of his safety is probably borne in part by Palestinian civilians.
Yes.
I think that Israel is obliged to accept that many more of its own sons and daughters will have to die in order to prosecute this war in a way it can be proud of. And I think that, that once again, it's callous to put it in those terms, but I think he's right.
Yes. Yeah.
That and this goes to what you were saying. This is not something that belongs in a genocide trial.
Yeah.
But from a political point of view,
Yes.
I think it's not just a fair point, but it's the main point.
Yes. Yeah.
Like you don't need to prosecute the war the way you're prosecuting the war.
Yeah.
They're acting like they have no choice. That's not true. They are making choices every day in how they prosecute the war.
Yes.
So anyway, so that's point one.
Yes.
Point two is bodily and mental harm plus the destruction of civilian infrastructure, such as the healthcare system. Preventing Palestinian births is one of them. That's a big deal with genocide, preventing births.
Yep. 60,000
people wounded and maimed, most of them women and children. Reports of white phosphorus usage, which caused deep and severe burns, even through bone. If that's true, it ain't genocide, but it's very strong evidence of a war crime.
Yes.
In fact, that's just a war crime.
Yep.
That's as far as hospitals go, only 13 out of 36 hospitals are even partially functional. There's no fully functioning hospital left in North Gaza. Israel obviously you know what their defense is going to be. It's going to be Hamas has embedded itself and its assets in hospitals, etc. Schools and mosques. They say Hamas launches rockets from areas, and they did. This was their defense in the trial.
Yep.
From areas designated as humanitarian zones. And look, there's some evidence to their claims, but we'd have to hear this in court.
Yes.
Yeah, we'd have to. This is the kind of thing that would take years going through, trying to find the actual evidence rather than just assertions.
Yes.
Forced displacement was the next one. 1.9 million Palestinians, that's 85% of the population, have been internally displaced. South Africa say that Israel at times gave hospitals 24 hours to evacuate with no assistance in moving the injured or in moving medical supplies. And they said that their first order, issued on 13th of October, demanded that 1.1 million Palestinians living or otherwise present in the north of Gaza, including Gaza City, move to the south of Gaza within a 24-hour window. They said, quote, the order itself was genocidal. Israel responded by saying none of those orders were for 24 hours. They might have said that at the beginning, but then they always gave people more time than that. They said the first one was over a week. Israel also noted that those warnings were the proof of them not trying to remove the population, but of them trying to protect the population. They said that's why they gave those warnings. And there's certainly plenty of evidence of warning phone calls, leaflets being dropped as evidence of, creating humanitarian corridors. There's evidence of that. Israel would argue those are things that you don't do if you're trying to kill people. Now South Africa said that many fled the north of the territory to the south, having been ordered to do so by Israel, only to be bombed again in the south. and told to flee once again further south or the southwest, where they are reduced to living in makeshift tents in camps with no water, sanitation or other facilities. Israel responded basically by saying, blame Hamas. They kept hiding where we were sending people. Yeah, I'd like to see the evidence. That's, once again, that's why you have a trial.
Yes.
Food and water blockade. Now, to me, this is my personal big point.
Right.
As far as genocide goes,
Yep.
I reckon here's your strongest area.
Okay.
Food. A December report from the Integrated Food Security Phase classification predicted that by February, all 2 million people in Gaza would face crisis levels of acute food insecurity. At least 1 in 4 households will be facing famine-like conditions, they said. That's back in December.
Yep.
UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees said that the number of trucks, including commercial goods going to Gaza, dropped from about 500 every working day since the war began to what Israel now says, is 107 a day. That's Israel's line. And that's the high point for the war. So it's been less than that throughout the war. The UN said that in the last week of December, food assistance only reached 8% of targeted people in need. That's not even mentioned the fuel blockade, which we never hear about. So if fuel is an essential, then I don't think they're getting it.
No.
We don't hear about that at all. Water is the real interesting one for me, though. I should say, by the way, Israel has been improving in the food space. Like they just approved thousands of tons of flour, which is like 6 months supply the other day, but not sure why it took 3 months. That's something worth investigating, I would have thought. Water, I reckon, is a real dodgy area. Israel still cut off piped water for northern Gaza, even now. The North's water desalination plant is non-functioning. I know they asked people to leave, but you can't just kill people through thirst if they choose not to leave. That's not acceptable. That is potentially genocide. They're piping a small amount of water to the south, but the damage from Israeli airstrikes has rendered most of the water system inoperable. The World Food Programme says that there's only 1.5 to 1.8 litres of clean water available per person per day for all uses. The emergency threshold is 15 litres per day for war conditions, apparently. The survival threshold is apparently 3 litres per day. So we're talking half the survival threshold. Israel say they're supplying 28 million litres of water a day to Gaza, which if you divide by 2 million, gets you to the emergency threshold at 15 litres. Now, is it true? If it's true, okay. If it's not true, why not? That, to me, they don't need to cut your water off to fight Hamas. That to me, is the clearest example of what could be a case for genocide. Because I don't see any other explanation of why you cut their water off. Israel, in their defense, gave no explanation. They just asserted they haven't. So let's see the evidence.
I mean, I suppose that is in line with theories of counterinsurgency that I can't quite remember what the metaphor is. Basically, drain the sea, like cut off any means of support to the population, and the population will cut off any means of support to your enemies. That's the theory. It's a murderous theory, right? And it was used by regimes who murdered lots of people. I think that might have been the Mengistu regime in Ethiopia that came up with that idea. Whether it's genocide or not, that's a recipe for killing a lot of people as a means of flushing out getting at your enemies. And this once again comes back to the point that does it actually need to be genocide to be a war crime? I mean, obviously it doesn't need to be genocide to be a war crime, but
why are people hung up on the word genocide?
Right,
when war crimes are also extremely bad. That's kind of where I was heading. Basically. I mean, I like the left seem obsessed with the word genocide, and I don't in the same way as the right are obsessed with the word invasion at the moment. And I don't know why that word matters so much to them.
Well,
but a war crime is bad.
Think back to one of the most controversial and original uses of the word genocide, which is the Armenian genocide. Now, Turkey, the successor state to the Ottoman Empire, claims to this day that wasn't genocide. That was people dying in a war.
Yeah.
That Turkey was the Ottoman Empire was carrying out an operation against its enemies, and a lot of people died. Not genocide. Those people still died, and they died horribly. I'm not saying the term genocide doesn't matter or isn't significant, but it is possible to get hung up on it at the expense of, I don't know, maybe not being able to see clearly what exactly war is. That, do we want to preserve war as this tool that we're always allowed to use? Sorry, I'm rambling a little bit here, but yeah, the point is that, we think of war as an instrument that can be used in these good ways or used in neutral ways, used by powers that we like. The reality is war is always an incredibly destructive thing. The way that Israel is fighting this war currently is a descendant of the way that the US fought wars in Indochina, where the whole theory was around the use of, the use of air power for everything, where once again, it didn't even matter if that air power demonstrably wasn't achieving these strategic aims. They just kept using it. They just kept pounding away. I don't think that what the United States did, say, in Cambodia would be considered genocide, but it was they killed a lot of innocent people in a war and destroyed the country in a way that paved the way for a genocide. The sort of the brutality of war, the destruction of war, the murder that's involved in war. Yeah, it might not come under the umbrella of genocide, but
it's horrific.
We shouldn't lose sight of how bad it actually is.
It's condemnable is the important thing. Yeah, which goes to your original point again.
Yes,
And the other thing is they didn't spend much time on specific incidents. South Africa detailed a couple of reports of summary executions by Israeli soldiers. Israeli soldiers celebrating deaths, unarmed Gazan people being shot dead, that kind of stuff. We've seen videos. We've all seen videos online of that kind of thing. Israel, well, to their credit, they acknowledge that some of that stuff happens. And they said that if people break the law, they should be dealt with the Israeli justice system, which I have questions about. I've expressed them on PEP before. But yeah, at least they acknowledge that that kind of stuff can happen. South Africa also said not very nice things about the Israeli justice system, which I agreed with. But anyway, I would say at the very least, the Israeli justice system seems inconsistent. At the very least.
Yep.
At its best, I think it's very good. But, anyway, where they spent most of the time is on comments. Because if you're trying to show intent, comments are a way you can show intent, right? And there are some doozies. They quoted a former member of the Knesset saying, "I tell you, in Gaza, without exception, they are all terrorists, sons of dogs. They must be exterminated, all of them killed. We will flatten Gaza, turn them to dust, and the army will cleanse the area." That's pretty genocidal. That person's also a nobody. But how about Israeli soldiers? One video showed Israeli soldiers in uniform on the 5th of December dancing, chanting, and singing, "May their village burn, may Gaza be erased." They are soldiers, also nobodies. Israel didn't deny that there are some genocidal people in Israel. They said it's not the policy of Israel, though.
Right.
So let's go to bigger politicians then. Let's go to the Deputy Speaker of the Knesset, tweeting on October 7th. "Now we all have one common goal, erasing the Gaza Strip from the face of the earth. Those who are unable will be replaced." Or the Israeli Minister of Energy on October 13. "All the civilian population in Gaza is ordered to leave immediately. We will win. They will not receive a drop of water or a single battery until they leave the world." And on October 12, humanitarian aid to Gaza, "No electrical switch will be turned on, no water hydrant will be opened, and no fuel truck will enter until the Israeli abductees are returned home. Humanitarianism for humanitarianism, and no one will preach us morality." Israel's response to those is that some people got carried away by the passion right after October 7, and those were all straight after October 7. But that didn't reflect the position of the government, they said. The verdict did single out a few comments, which we'll get to in a second. Let's go bigger politicians again then. If we're talking about the policy of the government, let's go to National Security Cabinet Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir. who said there's no finer person to go to for this kind of stuff. When we say that Hamas should be destroyed, it also means those who celebrate, those who support, and those who hand out candy. They're all terrorists, and they should also be destroyed. That's the 10th of November. That's not straight after October.
Yeah.
And we've got the Minister of Heritage, Amahal Eliyahu, on the 1st November wrote, "The north of Gaza Strip, more beautiful than ever. Everything is blown up and flattened. Simply a pleasure for the eyes." He also argued against humanitarian aid as, quote, "we wouldn't hand the Nazis humanitarian aid," and, quote, "there is no such thing as uninvolved civilians in Gaza." He also posited a nuclear attack on the Gaza Strip. Israel responded to them citing him.
Yep.
They said he was, quote, "completely outside the policy and decision-making processes in the war. In any event, his statement was immediately repudiated by members of the War Cabinet and other ministers, including the Prime Minister." And then they provide documentation and directives to the IDF that, quote, "attacks will be solely directed towards military targets while adhering to the principles of distinction, proportionality, and the obligation, taking precautions in attacks in order to reduce collateral damage." That's what the order said. And they said, in order to determine the policy intentions of the government of Israel, it's necessary to examine the decisions of the Ministerial Committee on National Security Affairs and the War Cabinet, and to examine whether the particular comments expressed conform or not with the policies and decisions made. That's what they said, argued.
Yeah.
So let's go to them, the big three.
Yeah.
President Isaac Herzog, on the 12th of October, he said, "It's an entire nation out there that is responsible. It's not true, this rhetoric about civilians not aware, not involved. It's absolutely not true. We will fight until we break their backbone." 12th of October, but it's not good.
No.
There was no defence offered for that quote. The ICJ noted that comment as being an issue in their findings. They singled that comment out. They also mentioned this one from Defence Minister Yoav Gallant. He's a pretty big guy.
Yep.
This is 9th of October. Still, Israel was imposing a complete siege on Gaza. No electricity, no food, no water, no fuel. Everything is closed. We are fighting human animals. We are acting accordingly. You might recall I mentioned this on the podcast at the time. I hated that from the first moment I heard that.
Yep.
Israel argued he's talking about Hamas as human animals. Maybe. I still hate it. I still don't think that's good.
Yeah, no, it's not.
It's ICJ singled that one out as well. They also quote him saying, "Gaza won't return to what it was before. We will eliminate everything. If it doesn't take one day, it'll take a week. It'll take weeks or even months. We will reach all places." South Africa, quoted him, not the ICJ.
Yeah.
I'm glad they didn't quote that. Seems to be a misquote.
Ah.
Israel say the translation they quoted from him is wrong. They say the crucial bit was not, "Gaza won't return to what it was before. We will eliminate everything." It was actually, "Gaza will not return to what it was before. There will be no Hamas.
Right.
We will eliminate it all." I believe them because if you watch the video, you can hear him say the word Hamas,
Right.
which wasn't in the original quote.
Okay.
So I think that's fair.
Yep.
Okay. And finally, I'm going to read you the whole Netanyahu section. The
Okay.
entire Netanyahu section that South
Okay.
Africa had. It doesn't go for that long.
Yep.
On October 7th, 2023, Netanyahu promised to operate forcefully everywhere. This is all a quote from South Africa. On 30th of October 2023, he confirmed that we are striking our enemies with unprecedented might. On 16th of October 2023, he described the situation as a struggle between the children of light and the children of darkness, between humanity and the law of the jungle. On 3rd November 2023, he asserted that this is the war between the sons of light and the sons of darkness. We will not let up on our mission until the light overcomes the darkness. The good will defeat the extreme evil that threatens us and the entire world. He said at Christmas, "We're facing monsters who murder children in front of their parents. This is a battle not only of Israel against these barbarians, it's a battle of civilization against barbarism." On the 20th of October 2023, as Israel, so far,
Yep.
I think all of those quotes sound like he's talking about Hamas,
Yep.
not Gaza. So I'm disregarding all of them. Then, on the 20th of October 2023, as Israeli forces prepared their land invasion of Gaza, the Prime Minister invoked the biblical story of the total destruction of Amalek.
There has been a lot written about this.
Yes, by the Israelites, stating, "You must remember what Amalek has done to you," says our Holy Bible. And we do remember. The Prime Minister referred again to Amalek in the letter sent on 3rd of November 2023 to Israel soldiers and officers. The relevant biblical passage reads as follows. Now go attack Amalek and prescribe all that belongs to him. Spare no one, but kill alike men and women, infants and sucklings, oxen and sheep, camels and asses. Now, that's a problem.
Yes.
That is definitely a problem. Now, do you want to say what you wanted to say about that before I say anything more?
Keep going, because just keep going with this.
Okay, all right.
A little bit more in a second.
Israel, interestingly, said that, quote, there is no need here for a theological discussion on the meaning of Amalek in Judaism, which was indeed not understood by the applicant. That's what they said in the case.
Yep.
They went on to say that there were bits from the speech that were missed out by South Africa, but I'm interested in having the theological discussion because it seems to me, at least according to some pieces I've read, that they got the wrong passage from the Bible.
Oh, right.
The quote they have is from Deuteronomy 25, 17, 18, which refers to an enemy clan that pursued and murdered the Israelites.
Yep.
Remember what Amalek did to you on your journey after you left Egypt, how undeterred by fear of God, he surprised you on the march when you were famished and weary and cut down all the stragglers in your rear. The Bible then asked the Israelites to blot out the memory of Amalek.
That's the key bit.
Yes.
Blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that is different to the one from Samuel, which is about killing men, women, camels, oxen, all that stuff.
Yes.
That's from Samuel. That's a different Bible passage.
Yes.
So okay. So now we're talking. So now just to be clear, and that's not a lame excuse, the Deuteronomy one,
No.
because apparently it's quite a famous phrase in Jewish culture. They use it a lot.
Yeah.
In fact, it's Israel's Holocaust Memorial refers to as well. The Hague's Holocaust Memorial is actually called the Amalek Monument.
Yep.
So okay, so now we're all on the same page of the real quote, the one about blotting out the memory of Amalek.
Yes. Yeah.
Say what you wanted to say.
It's really complicated.
You don't have to.
What I'm actually going to do is recommend an entire book about this.
Sure, why not?
It is
onto the list.
Yes, yeah. It's by John Corrigan. It's called Religious Intolerance, America and the World, A History of Forgetting and Remembering. And what this is about is the fact that, as I also wrote about in my book, Religious Persecution and Political Order in the United States, for a country whose self-image is about religious tolerance, there have actually been a lot of incidents of the attempted elimination of religious minorities in America. And Corrigan talks about how Amalek was one of the most widely cited things in American sermons in the 19th century. And for him, the key thing is actually the blotting out. It's not just that you want to eliminate them, it's you want to eliminate them from memory. And his argument is, though, that when you commit acts of violence like that, you never eliminate it from memory. The memory lives on. And your attempts to blot out the memory actually then manifest themselves in all kinds of ways, including your own persecution complex. And so one of his arguments is that American Christians are so obsessed with the possibilities of Christians being persecuted because this is one of the ways of trying to forget about religious persecutions that have taken place in the United States. The blotting out never occurs. God instructs you to blot out. If you can remember the fact that God instructed you to blot out, then you can remember what you actually did. So it's a very, very complicated thing. I'm not sure that the way that South Africa has used it here is entirely correct or helpful, but it is something that's extremely relevant when you're talking about these issues.
Yeah, and so you're saying even if they used it right,
yes, yeah,
it'd still be a feather in their cap.
Yes, yeah. But I don't know. I'm talking about the American context here.
Sure,
right? I don't actually know enough about the Israeli context to really talk about this. Although this is supposed to be a US-oriented podcast, which you might not have realised if you only tuned in
25 minutes,
half an hour ago. But that's another book that is really worth looking at.
Okay.
Yes.
Anyway, so that's basically the case from South Africa. Israel, they focused a lot on procedure, whether this case was valid, whether the court had jurisdiction, all that kind of stuff. They took a few shots at South Africa for being hypocritical, being close to Hamas. And look, South Africa is a bit hypocritical. They just in December, they set their president personally hosted a Sudanese warlord who's been accused of genocide. In 2015, they declined to act on the International Criminal Court's warrant for the arrest of a war criminal as well when he visited them. They've also recently praised China for their treatment of minorities in Xinjiang, etc. Xinjiang, thank you. But that doesn't get Israel off the hook.
No.
That's whataboutism. That's what that is. Israel broadly argued they didn't start the war. They didn't want the war. They didn't want any of these things to be happening, but they were acting in self-defense against Hamas. They said Hamas are the genocidal ones, not them. Yeah, whatever. Once again, I think you should take responsibility for your own decisions. South Africans advocates had actually previously dealt with that concept by saying, no matter how monstrous or appalling an attack or provocation, genocide is never a permitted response. Every use of force, whether in self-defense or enforcing occupation or policing operations, must stay within the limits set by international law. I agree.
Yeah.
And lots of blaming Hamas from Israel. South Africa at one point in time said, if any military operation, no matter how carefully it's carried out pursuant to intention to destroy people in whole or in part, it violates the Genocide Convention and it must stop, which I agree with as well. Okay, so that's the case. So now to what actually the verdict was, the findings. This will be a lot shorter. South Africa, according to the panel of judges, South Africa did show the existence of a real and imminent risk of irreparable prejudice to the rights protected under the Genocide Convention, which is all they needed to show. They essentially said some of the concerns are real, and that's all you need. They did not impose a ceasefire like they tried to in Ukraine, which obviously was ignored by Russia. They also, by the way, went out of their way to call for the immediate and unconditional release of the October 7 hostages. And they were quite critical of Hamas. Even though Hamas is not covered by the ICJ and they're not going to listen to them.
No.
But they did talk about Hamas. Right? So for those who are going, what about Hamas? Well, they talked about them. Their orders were, number one, take all measures within its power. These are all quotes. Israel should take all measures within its power to prevent the commission of all acts within the scope of Article 2 of the Convention. In particular, killing members of the group, causing serious bodily and mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, and imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. The Israeli judge dissented on that one. Two. Actually, I'll talk about it as I go. Okay, that one there.
Okay,
That one there doesn't mean much. People interpreted that as being, that's almost like a ceasefire, to tell them you got to stop military activity. No, they were really, really clear that the key phrase is in accordance with its obligations under the convention. You know what that means? Intent matters. And if you don't have intent to commit genocide, then you are in accordance with your obligations under the convention. So legally, that first order, which sounds like the whole ball game, isn't that much. In fact, they emphasize that. This is a quote from them. The court recalls that these acts fall within the scope of Article 2 of the Convention when they are committed with the intent to destroy in whole or in part a group as such. So they isolated intent on purpose. Right? So that's not really a big deal. Second one was take all measures within its power to prevent and punish the direct and public incitement to commit genocide in relation to members of the Palestinian group in Gaza Strip. The Israeli judge agreed with that, which is good. To be honest, that one's really in Israel's interest at this point in time, just for PR purposes. So they should go along with that one. Number 3, take immediate and effective measures to ensure the provision of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance to address the adverse conditions of life faced by Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. That one, by contrast, means a lot for a number of reasons. Number 1, they said it had to be effective. Take immediate and effective measures. Saying we sent X trucks in there is not, it does not satisfy that.
No.
It has to be effective. That's the first thing. The second thing is to ensure the provision of urgently needed basic services. Once again, Sending in trucks is not good enough. You have to ensure they were provided.
Yes.
So that has teeth.
Yes.
Well, to the extent that any of this can be enforced, which it can't.
Yep.
This has teeth.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
It means something. 4, take effective measures to prevent the destruction and ensure the preservation of evidence related to allegations of acts within the scope of the convention.
Yep.
I don't know quite how that works when you're trying to rebuild a place at some point in time in the future, but whatever, that's there. And 5, submit a report to the court on all measures taken to give effect to this order within 1 month as from the date of the order. That is awesome.
Yes.
Submitting a report is awesome. Now that is what goes to what you were saying about political.
Yes.
That's nothing to do with the law.
Yeah.
That's about PR.
Yes.
That's about political accountability.
Yes.
And I don't know if Israel are going to observe that. To give them credit, they turned up and they argued their case. And I'll give them more credit if they submit that report. That is a key report, and it will hold them to a certain degree of accountability. And I think that's great. And I think that's much better than just some dusty legal ruling in 5 years' time.
Yep.
I think that's really that
Yes.
that helps people now.
Yes.
So I think that one's really, really good.
Okay. Yep.
And of course, Israel, they threw a fit. Netanyahu, Israel's commitment to international law is unwavering. Equally unwavering is our sacred commitment to continue to defend our country and defend our people. Like every country, Israel has an inherent right to defend itself. The vile attempt to deny Israel this fundamental right is blatant discrimination against a Jewish state. It was justly rejected. The charge of genocide leveled against Israel is not only false, it's outrageous, and decent people everywhere should reject it. Gallant said, those who seek justice will not find it on the leather chairs of the court chambers in The Hague. They'll find it in the Hamas tunnels in Gaza, where 136 hostages are held and where those who murdered our children are hiding. Ben Gvir, Hague Schmaig. That's his comment.
Wow, that's a great comeback.
Is there a more embarrassing cabinet minister anywhere in the world than Ben Gvir?
Ooh.
Can you think of one? I can't. I actually spent a few minutes trying to think of one. I couldn't think of one.
Yeah, look, we'll come back to that next week.
Even was that Ryan Zinke?
Ryan Zinke
in the Trump administration?
He was pretty embarrassing.
He was very embarrassing.
Yeah,
I reckon Ben Gvir is more embarrassing than him. Anyway.
Let me think about this, though. Like, there have been a lot of cabinets in a lot of countries.
Take that on notice.
Not all top drawer.
If people want to suggest one that's more embarrassing than Ben Gvir in the comments, please.
Yeah.
I'm sure someone will come with something straight up and thought of. Anyway, do you have any comments, any thoughts, anything of this? I just want to do a full thorough summary.
I think we have done it pretty thoroughly.
I think we have.
I don't have any further.
Okay. Before we move on to a different topic, can I just, when we're talking about genocide versus war crimes and stuff,
yes,
can I talk about just briefly the thing which I think, as far as on the ground goes, politics,
yes,
I think was actually a bigger deal and got kind of ignored.
Yes, what's that?
Which was something involving Bernie Sanders in the last few weeks. You across this?
No.
Sanders has been an interesting guy to follow on this issue because he's sympathetic towards Israel generally.
Yes.
But at the same time, he's very aware of the human rights implications of their behaviour.
Yes.
And obviously his supporters are the least sympathetic group towards Israel as well.
Yes.
So it's a pretty thin tightrope he's walking.
Yes.
Right? Last week, he tried to use something called the Foreign Assistance Act. It stops the American government from providing security assistance to any government which, quote, engages in a consistent pattern of gross violations of internationally recognised human rights.
Ah.
Isn't that interesting?
That is, yes.
It would require the State Department to report on any human rights abuses that Israel committed using US weapons. If they don't report back within 30 days, it would stall military aid going to Israel until the report comes through.
Right.
In essence, Bernie Sanders said, we will be voting on a very simple question. Do you support asking the State Department whether human rights violations may have occurred using US equipment or assistance in the war? I hope it's not controversial to ask how US weapons are being used, said Bernie Sanders. I agree with him. That's a great question. Turns out it was controversial. It got 11 votes in the Senate.
Oof.
72 against. The 4 votes, for those who are interested, LaFonza Butler of California, Martin Heinrich, that's a replacement of Dianne Feinstein, Martin Heinrich of New Mexico, Mazie Hirono of Hawaii, Ben Ray Illusion of New Mexico, Ed Markey and Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts, Jeff Merkley of Oregon, Chris Van Hollen of Maryland, and Peter Welch of Vermont. Rand Paul was the only Republican to vote against tabling the resolution. That, to me, is extremely depressing.
Yes.
Because honestly, I can't think of a legitimate reason why you wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Are they okay with human rights abuses with their weapons? I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they are.
Yeah.
But are they? But like that to me is a great move from Bernie.
Yes.
Like if they actually did that.
Yes. Yeah.
That would have. Oh God. There's semi-nudity happening next door. It's ugly semi-nudity. Ugly. Anyway. You thought it couldn't get uglier than what we've been talking about for the last half an hour. It can. Next door. Anyway. Full credit to Bernie for trying, and a huge brickbat. I am not at all grateful to the 72 people who voted against.
No.
Even as someone, you know my position.
Yes.
I am.
Yeah.
I am like sympathetic to Israel.
Yes.
Generally speaking. I'm becoming increasingly less sympathetic to them as this war goes on.
Yeah, that shouldn't have been controversial.
Yeah. But this, I mean, come on.
That should not have been controversial.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Let's get off this topic. It's very depressing.
Okay.
But it needed to be done. Dave, talk about E.J. Carroll.
Okay. So the second defamation trial has concluded. So this relates to Trump's sexual assault of E.J. Carroll in the 1990s. You'll remember that a civil court found him liable for sexual assault, not rape under the technical definition, but it has been ruled non-defamatory to refer to Trump as a rapist because the common language expression of rape is broader than the narrow New York criminal definition. He was also found guilty of, or found liable for defamation, but that was only to the tune of $5 million in that trial. Now, this defamation trial was about things he specifically said as president.
Yes.
Which are particularly damaging because he had the megaphone of the presidency.
Did he ever?
And you'll remember he claimed not only that E. Carroll was lying, but that he'd never actually met E. Carroll, which is a very easily disprovable, photographically disprovable claim.
Yes.
So this was one of the trials that Trump has used as a campaign tool. He keeps turning up. He keeps saying derogatory, possibly defamatory things about E. Carroll. His social media account keeps saying derogatory, possibly defamatory things about the judge while he is sitting in court.
Yes. And not just one.
Yeah.
Like they're like 40 posts in a couple of hours.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's an incredible amount. So, E. Carroll's lawyers argued this is an incredibly rich man. And they pointed to recent claims that he has made when he was asked about his net worth. And he said, his brand alone is worth $10 billion and his property holdings are worth $14 billion. Now, I've talked before about Trump's own theories of his net worth, which are that it's purely subjective, that it's largely based on how he feels. And I've talked before at length about what is wrong with this theory. His $24 billion net worth theory is almost certainly inflated. In fact, Bloomberg puts his net worth at about $3.1 billion. Now, that is still a lot.
Yeah.
That still makes him an incredibly wealthy man. But liquid assets, that's something different. So in his deposition for the fraud trial that he's facing in New York, his lawyers claimed that his liquid assets were somewhere north of $400 million. I've seen 450 is the figure thrown around quite a lot. Letitia James argued that $92 million of their estimate was wrong, that was tied up in investments that were not liquid. And she's looking for $376 million of that. And that's the judgment that so she's basically asked for everything that all of his liquid assets. E. Carroll's lawyers asked for and got $83 million. Yeah. So they've basically
they didn't ask for $83 million.
Oh, so
they asked for $25 million.
Yes, yeah, that's
they
right.
got $83 million.
I forgot that little detail. Yes, they got $83 million on the grounds that Trump is so rich.
Yeah.
And everyone is so sick of him making defamatory comments, not just about E.G. Carroll, but about legal personnel as well, that you need to penalise him a lot.
The quote from the lawyer, Roberta Kaplan, it will take an unusually high punitive damages award to have any hope of stopping Donald Trump.
That's right. Yes. Now, I mean, he's brought it on himself. This is what you get when you claim that you're worth $24 billion. Like, fine, pay up $83 million then. Yeah. But yeah, if you... But if you combine that 83 million with the 376 million that Letitia James is seeking, I've got no idea whether she'll get it or not.
We'll find out in the next couple of days.
Yeah, that is basically all of Trump's liquid assets, that or at least what his lawyers have identified as liquid assets. So that's obviously pretty significant, and it does appear to have worked. I mean, we're clearing an incredibly low bar where we're saying Trump has managed not to make any defamatory comments since then.
Yeah,
but he hasn't.
No, he hasn't.
It's
amazing.
Hasn't. Yeah, this has actually worked. Now, there are so many ironies at work here. The biggest one being Trump, when he was president, constantly talked about wanting to open up libel laws to make them more like Britain. Or by extension, more like Australia. Have you ever seen a libel judgment that big in Britain or Australia? No. The part of the thing about the fact that we've got defamation laws that are so regularly and successfully used, and by the way, I don't think that's a particularly positive part of either British or Australian political culture.
Oh, no, I don't like
the fact that politicians can and do so regularly use them. I think that, Australia's defamation laws are far too heavily weighted towards politicians. I mean, towards plaintiffs in general, but towards politicians.
Us friendly Geordies.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not saying that the US has the balance right, but like... But
I am. I like the US laws. They're good.
Anyway, I would prefer the US laws to the Australian laws on this. And so anyway... But yeah, so Mr. Let's Open Up the Libel Laws is now actually facing potentially bigger penalties than anything ever handed down in Britain or Australia.
I should just explain something quickly, by the way.
Yeah.
And that is when we talk about this shutting him up.
Yes.
The reason for that, just in case you at home haven't made the connection, is because this is a threat to Trump.
Yes, it is.
Because the first time was 5 million, the second time was 83 million. This is an implicit threat to him. The next time, get ready to pull out the checkbook in the hundreds of millions of dollars.
Exactly. Yes. And sure, okay, his super PAC is raising a lot of money that is being used.
Can't use a cent of that to pay these fines.
Not these fines, no.
Yeah, not these fines.
His legal costs, his lawyer costs?
Yeah, lawyer costs, fine.
Yeah, and
$83 million, no.
Yeah, so there was a report, I think it was today or yesterday, saying his super PAC has spent $55 million on his defence. And that's actually, when you make a donation to the super, it is actually in the fine print that 10% of it goes towards this particular branch of it, which is being used to pay the legal fees. So that's 10% of donations that are going to Trump are paying legal fees at the moment, yes, but they can't pay these damages. So his supporters are not just going to be able to get him out of it. That's going to come from his assets. And honestly, who knows whether what those lawyers claimed about $450 million was actually correct. So this actually is... They are finally beginning to operate in the realm of numbers that are large enough to pose such a threat that they actually have changed Trump's behaviour. Although, who knows? It's only been a week.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe we're speaking too soon.
Also, like when you get a huge verdict like this, like a huge penalty, punitive damage penalty, they often get reduced.
Yes.
So I wouldn't necessarily assume there's $65 million of punitive damages here out of the $83 million.
Yeah.
I wouldn't assume he's going to appeal it. So
and he doesn't have to pay anything until the appeals process is exhausted.
But he does have to pay the court.
Yes.
Like he needs the money. He has to pay the court. He pays the court holds it.
Yep.
And then he can appeal. He can't appeal until he's paid the court.
Yes.
If he doesn't have $83 million handy, he can try and get a bond.
Yep.
But if he gets a bond, he's going to have to get a financial institution to lend him, and then he'll be paying interest, he'll be paying fees, all that kind of stuff. So, so for those asking whether he can get away with not paying it, no. Not if he wants an appeal. If he wants an appeal, he has to pay the court. And then no matter what he does, they've got the money. So
and I understand people asking that question because his whole career was built on not paying for stuff. But in this case, he actually can't.
Yeah, it's an interesting area, this, because like there's been a lot of discussion about whether it's excessive or not. I think this is really interesting because like I said, they didn't ask for this. The jury gave it to them.
Yes.
And I can't help thinking that the jury sat there watching Trump for the entire thing while he's chucking tantrums, he's huffing and puffing.
Yes,
he's
yeah.
talking back to the judge. He's storming out halfway through Roberta Kaplan's conclusion. I can't help thinking they would have watched. I mean, Roberta Kaplan's main argument was, he has no respect for the law.
No.
You need to teach him respect for the law.
Yeah.
I can't help thinking that that's what they tried to do.
Yeah.
And that's why it's $65 million.
That's right.
Yeah, because they were like if he just stayed away from his trial.
Yes, yeah.
I don't think it would have been $83 million.
No.
I think it's largely because of his conduct, which is, if that's true, great.
Yes.
It's rare that you get justice like that.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's probably going to get reduced. But we'll see. Hopefully it won't. It's he can afford it. It's anyway.
I don't know if he can.
Well,
I honestly don't know if he can. I don't know if he's got $83 million.
If he can't,
I'm not confident.
It serves him right. He can sell a property.
Yeah.
But, anyway. What else on this? Do you have other things to say about this?
No.
Oh yeah, okay. I've got a question, which is, was Judge Kaplan, as opposed to the lawyer Kaplan, which is a bit confusing.
Yeah.
Do you feel that Judge Kaplan was too restrictive in what he was allowing Trump to say? Because the logic of the trial, you know where I'm going.
Yeah.
The logic of the trial was this is the second part of the trial. And the first part, we established that more likely than not, you committed sexual assault. That's now goes into the facts of the second part of the trial. So you can't dispute that.
Yep.
So you can't say at any point in time, she's lying, or I didn't do it.
Yeah.
You can't say anything like that. You just have to accept it as a fact. And then you have to tell us why you are should be less accountable for what you said as a result of this. Right? And so we had the situation where it comes to Trump's testimony, where before Trump said a word, the judge told the jury found that Mr. Trump inserted his fingers into her vagina and that Miss Carroll did not make up her claim, and that Mr. Trump's June 11 and June 22 statements were defamatory. Now Mr. Trump may not make any argument against this. Then he allowed Haber to speak to Trump. She asked Trump if he stood by his video deposition, in which he claimed he never met Carroll and that she was lying when she said he had assaulted her. Trump said 100% yes. Haber said, did you deny the allegation to defend yourself? Sorry, did you deny the allegation to defend yourself? And he said, yes, I did. That's exactly right. She said something I considered a false accusation. And then Kaplan interrupted him and told the jury to disregard everything he said after, yes, I did.
Yep.
Haber then said, did you instruct anyone to hurt Mrs. Carroll? Trump said, no, I just wanted to defend myself, my family, and frankly, the presidency. Kaplan then interrupted him and instructed the jury to disregard everything after the word no.
Yep, Kaplan is absolutely correct.
So there's no doubt.
Yes.
I shouldn't say there's no doubt. But
in
my view, he went by the book.
Yes, he did.
Right, he just went straight by the book.
Yeah.
But I must admit, it still made me a little bit uncomfortable.
No, it didn't make me uncomfortable at all. He's one of the few people who has not allowed Trump to turn it into a campaigning opportunity.
Yeah, that's true.
Or just not allowed Trump to turn it into his own personal TV show.
Yeah.
He's within his rights to do that. I wish that more people had done that earlier, more often. Then maybe you wouldn't have had so many Americans who have completely thrown their own self-respect out of the window to accommodate Trump.
Yep.
If more people had shown that kind of backbone earlier, we wouldn't be in the position that we're in now.
Having said that, I like the backbone.
Yes.
I agree with you on that. And let me just be very clear as well.
Yep.
The person who's most at fault here, even if you are uncomfortable about just how strict Kaplan was, the person who's at fault here is Trump.
Yes.
Not just for sexually assaulting AJ Carroll, but let's just say he didn't. Let's just say he didn't. Let's just say that he dropped the ball in his first civil case.
Yes.
He didn't take it seriously.
No.
He didn't come up. He didn't testify. He didn't defend himself.
Yep.
He had a pathetic defense.
Yes.
And then surprise, they found it. They were not they found him guilty. Sorry, we had correspondence about this. I keep on saying they found him guilty. There's a correspondence from from Jeff Brown saying, we use the term found guilty of sexual assault in a criminal case.
Yes.
This is a civil case. You're found liable. Liable in a civil
that's
case.
right.
That's right. It's you're only found guilty when you're proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Whereas a civil case is 50% plus a feather.
I'm sure that I have slipped into that quite a few times, and I'm sorry for that. Yes, it is liable,
Fair
not
enough.
guilty. I am guilty of that. Or liable for that.
You're liable for that.
Yes.
But the fact is, he didn't take it seriously.
No, he didn't.
And now he realised that was a mistake.
And by the way, Haber, even by the standards of Trump's lawyers,
Yes.
she's bottom 25%.
Just before you go on.
Yeah.
Also from Jeff.
Yes.
Jeff said, you also didn't mention how bad at lawyering Haber has been.
She really is.
Judge calling her out on not knowing rules of evidence.
Yeah.
Standing when speaking. Don't keep arguing when I've made my ruling, etc. Or that Haber lied to the court saying that Trump needed Wednesday, Thursday off for Melania's dad's funeral, but Wednesday was a campaign rally. Yeah, sorry, what were you saying?
Look, okay, she's above Powell, Eastman, and Giuliani.
And that she's not going to jail.
Yeah, but like she's close to next cab off the rank. Yeah. Like you do wonder. Yeah, you do wonder where he found her.
Yeah, she's pretty bad.
She's pretty bad.
She's pretty bad.
She's pretty bad. I'm not going to say that makes me feel sorry for Trump.
Yeah.
But you do wonder whether everybody's right to legal representation has actually been held up in this case here. Someone who's watched a lot of judge shows potentially could have done a better job than this. Yeah.
Look, I don't have the quotes ahead of me because I wasn't planning to talk about this, but probably the worst part. Actually, there's two parts.
Yeah.
She also, when she said she might have COVID, she turned up that day at Trump's party.
Yeah.
And there was a photo taken of her and put online. Anyway, but the thing that was worse, which I don't have the quotes for, unfortunately, because the quotes were also funny.
Yeah.
Was she suggested that she was going to appeal?
Yeah.
Because the two Kaplans, according to her, knew each other. They went to the same law firm. They worked in the same law firm like 30 years ago. And she said that Judge Kaplan had a mentee relationship with Roberta Kaplan.
Yeah.
And she said, so therefore there was a conflict of interest. Now, first of all, that's not a conflict of interest. Right? Every judge knows heaps of lawyers. Like it's a small community. But on top of that, and also on top of that, there were a number of aspects of this conflict of interest she cited that came out during the trial that she said nothing about. And once you say nothing about it, you can't cite it afterwards.
Yeah.
So she did say that was stupid as well. But then the best part was Roberta Kaplan responded with basically saying, I reserve the right to sue you because you've made this up. Like we worked at the same firm, but I literally never had anything to do with him at all. And he definitely wasn't my mentor. And I would like to know the name of the person who you're quoting as saying this, so I can potentially commence legal proceedings, because this is just not true. And then Haber responded with that by just withdrawing it completely the next day and saying, since she denies it, it's obviously I was just testing her out just to see, and it was so lame. It was not impressive stuff. I wish I had the quotes because they were funny quotes.
Yeah.
But she's not a good lawyer.
No.
Let's talk Tay-Tay.
Okay.
This is a bit more fun than the ICJ.
Yes, this is. So
Go for it.
Over the last really 3 days, the conspiracy theories have been exploding about the Super Bowl.
Yes.
Now, the background to this, for those of you not familiar with it, it's for most of this NFL season, Taylor Swift has been in a high-profile romance with Kansas City's tight end Travis Kelce. Now, this is obviously two extremely high-profile people. It's been talked about, it's not just two extremely high-profile people. It's actually the sort of combination of two of the most powerful cultural forces in America, which is Taylor Swift and the NFL, taking Travis Kelce as a cipher for the NFL.
Sure.
And so there were a lot of perfectly good conspiracy theories about this before the MAGA crowd came along and ruined it, which is essentially that the NFL always needs to broaden its appeal, especially with women. Part of the reason is, like, yes, it might be popular, but the supply of future NFL players is pretty shaky because people are getting a little bit worried about
concussion,
sending their children into what seems like a career of certain brain damage. So the idea is maybe it's the way the NFL expanding its appeal with women, given Taylor Swift's appeal across multiple generations of women. Now, that conspiracy theory falls apart when you start asking questions like, well, what's actually in it for Taylor Swift then? Because no person in the United States is less in need of additional publicity than Taylor Swift.
Yes.
Like, she does not need the NFL.
No.
Drew McGarry, who's a sports writer, pointed out she's never played the Super Bowl halftime show because she doesn't need to. Right? A lot of very high-profile people play it, but even for them, it's still a boost to their profile. For her, it wouldn't be a boost to a profile.
She is literally the biggest star in the world.
Exactly. Yeah. She doesn't need it. So anyway, this has never been a conspiracy theory that's really held up to scrutiny, but it's a very understandable one, right? It does seem like this incredibly kind of convenient thing, and people have talked about how much the NFL has really milked it, although there has been a very forensic study done because she kept turning up to Kansas City Chief games, and they said it's only been across 6 games or however many games it was. There's only been like 2 minutes of footage of Taylor Swift celebrating in the press box.
But it's not a conspiracy theory anyway.
No.
Like they show celebrity shots in sporting contests. That's not conspiracy. That's just
not at
what
all.
happens.
Not if you've ever seen a Los Angeles Lakers game, you've seen Jack Nicholson. Yeah. You might have seen Anthony Kiedis if they couldn't find Jack Nicholson. It's a lot of the conspiracy theory for a while was that there didn't seem to be any intimacy between Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. Like that, there for a long time there were no photos of them kissing or anything like that. So but all
this is after she spent 6 years in a relationship where you didn't even see them holding hands.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So this was all in the realm of kind of bored entertainment. Yeah. Conspiracy theory is bored entertainment. And just generally healthy cynicism. No, it's really morphed into something else now. Yes. And really, to some extent, this is Joe Biden's fault because it started being reported that Joe Biden was looking for Taylor Swift's endorsement again, right? So he got it last time around. Now, one of the things that this made me realize was how insignificant Taylor Swift's endorsement actually was last time around.
It was just a photo.
Yeah. And given given, as we said, how big she is as a cultural force, given that Biden's victory in the end came down to 40,000 votes across yes, he beat Trump by 7 million, but I don't think that anyone believes that Taylor Swift's endorsement was some kind of election-shattering force.
No.
And there's no reason to believe that an endorsement this time around would be an election-shattering force.
And can I explain why very simply?
Yes.
Because every single person on earth knows she's a Democrat.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Like, oh my God, a Democrat endorses a Democrat.
Exactly. It's been pointed
out. Hold the front page.
She backed a Democrat in the last Tennessee gubernatorial race who lost by 11 points. Maybe he would have lost by 14 if she hadn't backed him.
And all the supporters know about it as well because she mentioned it in one of her docos.
Yes.
Anyway, you go on.
Yeah, I'm actually struggling to think of an important celebrity endorsement. In 2020, the one celebrity endorsement that I thought might matter was The Rock because... That actually was pretty unexpected because The Rock, not because you think that The Rock's a Republican, but he's, pretty assiduously apolitical. Up until that point. I thought that might have mattered, but now I don't think it did.
In 2016, Hillary Clinton had 3/4 of Motown show up.
Yeah.
Like she had so many celebrities endorsing her. It made no difference whatsoever.
Yes. Yeah. No, I remember getting a message from a journalist shortly after that election saying, is the message that we should take from this that Scott Baio is a more powerful cultural force than all of the celebrities who endorse the Democrats. If celebrity endorsements matter, the effects are pretty marginal. And that can matter in very close elections, but probably not very much. But this was enough, obviously, to send a certain section of the media insane.
Yes.
With the conspiracy theories.
The online rise.
Yes, yeah. So Vivek Ramaswamy.
I've got it.
You've got it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's hear what Vivek had to say.
No, here. I'll read it out.
Okay,
I'll read it out.
Let's hear what Vivek had to say.
Sorry, I didn't write down. You keep going. I'll read it out in a second. Yeah.
He referred to Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift as an artificially culturally propped up couple.
He did.
Yeah. Now, this is the thing. As I said, there were plenty of conspiracy theories about how this romance isn't real. The online right is increasingly arguing that their popularity isn't real. That it's all been a political conspiracy from the beginning.
The quote is, I wonder who's going to win the Super Bowl next month, and I wonder if there's a major presidential endorsement coming from an artificially culturally propped up couple this fall. Just some wild speculation over here. Let's see how it ages over the next 8 months.
Artificially culturally propped up. Look, the popularity of both Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce is pretty easy to understand. Okay, and assuming that everyone here knows who Taylor Swift is, but might not know who Travis Kelce is, 9-time All-Pro. He's won 2 Super Bowls with the Kansas City Chiefs, and he has also quite cannily made himself into a cultural figure over the last few years, because with his older brother, he has a podcast. I can't remember the name of it, and anyway, I'm not endorsing anyone else's podcast on our podcast.
Them.
Damn it!
You can talk about us,
but he is very good at it. And now, obviously, he's a figure of suspicion to many people because he's endorsed a woke beer, Bud Light.
Yep.
He has made pro-vaccination public service announcements.
Mr. Pfizer, they call him.
That's right. And so culturally suspect. But just in terms of. Because a lot of this conspiracy theory is actually that the entire NFL and even the entire sports industrial complex is involved in this woke conspiracy. If you look at the way that the NFL has actually gone over the last year, one of the biggest changes in the whole media landscape was that ESPN brought on board Pat McAfee. Okay, so Pat McAfee is another podcaster who is wildly successful in the podcast space. ESPN brought him on, gave him an insane amount of editorial control over his own show, right? To the extent now that they can't in their schedule say when his show is going to end because it's a podcast. Yeah. And he's a bit like us. He can say he's going to keep it to 2 hours, but he's not necessarily going to keep it to 2 hours. He's also, this is ESPN, this is a network where everyone dresses in suits. His signature look is sleeveless tank top. Now, and he's he is not really overtly political. But he appeals to the same kind of people as listen to Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson and stuff like that. And even if he isn't overtly political, his guests, one of his most frequent guests is Aaron Rodgers.
Yes, who definitely is political.
Aaron Rodgers, definitely political. So Aaron Rodgers has frequently used Pat McAfee's show as a venue for his various hobby horses.
He's the one who called Travis Kelce Mr. Pfizer.
Yes. So, Aaron Rodgers, very anti-vax, lied to the NFL about his own vaccination status, claimed that he was immunized, and then later claimed that he was referring to his natural immunity rather than his vaccination status. Anyway, so, this is, if anything, this is a lot more representative of what the NFL and ESPN and the general sports industrial complex has lent itself to over the last couple of years. By the way, Aaron Rodgers a few weeks ago suggested that Jimmy Kimmel might be worried about revelations about who'd been on Jeffrey Epstein's plane. I don't even know why he made this claim. But that actually very briefly meant that Pat McAfee said, he's not going to be a guest on this show anymore, but then brought him back the next week. Another much remarked phenomenon on this show is that there's this former Ohio State linebacker called AJ Hawk, who's also a regular guest, who never actually says anything. He just kind of, sits there.
That's not good for a podcast.
Or stands there. No, it's not. Anyway, the point being that the NFL and the media surrounding the NFL, because Pat McAfee isn't a part of the NFL. He's a former NFL player. He's a former kicker. But Aaron Rodgers is very much part of the NFL. What I'm saying is, it is not some force for wokeness.
No.
If there was a conspiracy by the NFL to promote wokeness and get Biden reelected, they're doing an incredibly crappy job.
But the online right still treat NFL as if they're woke.
Absolutely.
Because they have forgiven them for Colin Kaepernick.
No.
Yeah, about him taking a knee and the NFL doing nothing about it.
Yes.
They also haven't forgiven them for
Travis
running.
Kelce also did participate in.
He did.
He
did. Oh dear. And they also haven't forgiven the NFL for running the black national anthem before the American national anthem a few times. They didn't like that. And the reason why, a few peppers have in the comments have. I mentioned this on Planet America on Wednesday, and they were saying, "Oh, the NFL's pretty conservative." No. Lots of conservatives like the NFL because the NFL is the biggest sport in America. Yeah. Heartland, all that kind of stuff. Absolutely. Yeah. But the online right do not like the NFL. No. I know this for a fact because until this year, until probably Taylor Swift helped them, their ratings have been going down for the last few years. And I can tell you the Daily Wire have been death riding their ratings the whole time. Running article after article going, the season opener didn't go so well as it did last year. Go woke, go broke. So,
where it's all sports broadcasts are down everywhere.
I know.
Yes. But although the NFL's actually up this year.
This year they're up.
The NFL, it has the most cross-cultural, cross-racial, even cross-gender appeal of any major American sport. That's been reflected in surveys for a long time, and they're always trying to broaden its appeal. So they are really trying to be everything to everyone, which obviously puts them in impossible positions a lot of the time. We probably didn't need to spend this much time saying that this conspiracy theory is bullshit.
That's okay. Let's just take a break.
Okay.
Let's take a little break because we spent so long talking about this conspiracy theory.
Yes.
I feel people need to take the time. It's 6 minutes long. So if you need to go to the toilet, you can really enjoy yourself in there. But I strongly advise you can skip ahead 6 minutes if you like. I strongly advise you to spend this 6 minutes watching or listening to the clip I'm about to play you from One American News Network. It's from a lady called Alison Steinberg, who is, she's an interesting cat.
Yes.
I don't know about the fur around her ass and whether it needs shaving or whatever, but that sounded really weird. I hope those who heard that know what I'm referring to from earlier in the podcast. Those who came in halfway through will go, what the hell is he talking about? Alison, Steinberg is, this is the best clip I have seen about any conspiracy theory. And a whole 6 minutes is gold. I'm going to take notes during this and I'll just read you the notes I took. So pay attention. I'll test you later. Here we go.
The first one, that's the most famous and the most common, is working with famous people or main influencers to share information or a particular message. So I include Taylor Swift in here.
Well, what you just watched there was the incredible moment that a rep from the Pentagon's Psychological Operations Research firm pitched NATO's military Psyop center on turning Taylor Swift into an asset back in 2019. Now, we've talked about this on the show before, but now we have to talk about it again. Because a new poll conducted by Redfield and Wilton Strategies found that 18% of voters say they're significantly more likely to vote for a candidate endorsed by Taylor Swift. It's reported the 2024 presidential election will see 8 million new voters in the U.S. electorate and a total of 41 million Gen Z voters, many of whom are obviously influenced by celebrities and social media. And seeing as T-Swift has a whopping 94.9 million followers on X alone, compared to Trump's inactive account with 87 million, and Biden's POTUS account with a measly 33 million, half of which are probably bots, let's be honest, I'd say, yeah, that's probably reason for concern. Especially when you take into account the fact that George Soros and the Carlyle Group own Taylor Swift and her music.
After I was denied the chance to purchase my music outright, my entire catalog was sold to Scooter Braun's Ithaca Holdings in a deal that I'm told was funded by the Soros family, 23 Capital, and the Carlyle Group. Yet, to this day, none of these investors have ever bothered to contact me or my team directly to perform their due diligence on their investment in me, to ask how I might feel about the new owner of my art.
Well, yeah, Soros might own her music, but the devil surely owns her soul. We all know Taylor Swift openly perpetuates all the mainstream liberal talking points. She's very pro-LGBT, she supports abortion, she condemned white supremacy during the BLM riots of 2020, she despises Trump, and now look. The mainstream media is massively pushing the pop star to continue furthering their agenda. She suddenly becomes political, and now she's plastered all over magazines, airports, the NFL, and now even the Super Bowl. It's just 24/7 nauseating coverage. And we're supposed to pretend we don't see the psyop? Look, we all know what's happening with Taylor Swift is not organic and it's not natural. It's a coordinated marketing campaign by Democrats to leverage celebrities to excite their base into coming out and voting. They know Joe Biden is incapable of doing that. So instead, they have to use their Hollywood puppets to propagate a narrative that'll influence the absent-minded masses. I mean, come on. They did it once before. Why not do it again? And this time go really hard and double down all the way. Isn't it interesting? She just so happens to be dating Kansas City Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce, better known as Mr. Pfizer. Oh, who's now also going to the Super Bowl, which is sponsored by, you guessed it, Pfizer. By the way, how shameful is it the New York Post further pushes the propaganda, putting this story first above the headline regarding the 3 U.S. servicemen who were killed in the drone strike in Jordan yesterday. Amazing. Really goes to show where our priorities lie as a nation. It's rather disgusting, but I digress. America's pop star celebrity sweetheart joins forces with the top dog in the NFL, playing for the team that's going to the Super Bowl. I mean, let's be real here. This is bread and circuses on steroids. Major League Sports, in and of itself, is nothing but a psyop. Get kids plugged into the cycle of going to public indoctrination camps, playing sports for their school, and going to games. Many end up devoting their entire childhood to competing in various sports, only to be cut from the team, at which point they become brainwashed into supporting professional teams because they know their dreams of becoming a pro athlete will probably never happen. So then they become obsessed with some grown man who gets paid millions of dollars every year to throw a ball around while promoting poison death shots and child slave labor through various brand deals and endorsements. So sad. Imagine being so brainwashed by sports you actually show up to your team stadium to shovel snow for free so you can watch a bunch of grown men who are overpaid tackle each other. Seriously though, trudging through 3 feet of snow amid a massive blizzard just to watch a game? Yeah, sorry, you couldn't pay me to do that. Just imagine for a moment if people were as dedicated to Jesus as they are professional sports. I think the country might look pretty different if that were the case. But sadly, as we know, it's not. And perhaps that's why we're witnessing the crumbling and degradation of our once great nation. Instead, all we seem to care about are the celebrities and athletes propped up by the Hollywood elites and this ongoing theater, this fake, carefully crafted show that the masses have been hypnotized by and can't seem to turn off. The question is, with the wide open border and millions of illegals pouring in daily, the stealing at the ballot boxes and censoring conservative news and Republican incumbents being removed from the ballot and financing Nikki Haley and so on, why do the powers that be need this dynamic duo to sway the vote? Don't they have enough dirty tricks up their sleeves as it is? Think about it. If Taylor Swift is really owned by Soros, we might actually have a rare chance to unite against him, using Taylor Swift as the Trojan horse. Instead of pushing the alphabet mafia and murdering of babies to her fans, She should be warning about the dangers of the corrupt elites. I mean, that's something we could all come together on, right? But of course, that'll never happen with this guy pulling the strings, now will it? It'll certainly be interesting to watch what happens over the next 8 months. Let's see who ends up winning the Super Bowl and if there's a major presidential endorsement coming from an artificially, culturally propped up couple this fall. Only time will tell. But don't forget who warned you and predicted it before it happens. My final thought for conservatives: if you still support Taylor Swift and the NFL and conveniently turn a blind eye to what's happening here, I got news for you. You're part of the problem. Which is why I hereby declare we should all boycott, just as we did Target and Bud Light.
Okay. Let's go through quickly. First of all, she got the job of the researcher wrong. The researcher was not some Pentagon Psyop person. It was just a research engineer from Johns Hopkins University. Secondly, she cited the 18% figure about Taylor Swift influencing 18% of voters according to some shitty poll.
It was published in the Daily Mail.
Yeah, it was at Newsweek,
Yeah.
which isn't much better. So she didn't mention that the same poll said 17% were less likely to vote for whoever Taylor Swift said she'd vote for. I love the way she had to say that Trump's X account was inactive when she noted that Swift has more Twitter followers than Trump. That's pretty obvious what's going on there. George Soros doesn't own Taylor Swift. What are you saying? George Soros owns Taylor Swift. He doesn't own Taylor Swift. Scooter Braun bought Taylor Swift's back catalogue, and she rather famously worked around that, mind you.
She did.
And George Soros financed Scooter Braun's acquisition.
Yeah.
But George Soros, at best, you could say he owns her back catalogue, which he doesn't. Scooter Braun does.
Yeah, yeah.
He doesn't own her. That's a weird thing to say. She says the MSN... she said the MSN is now promoting Taylor Swift. What? They've been doing this since 2014. That's when the 1989 album came out.
Yeah.
Just that this ghoul that is out of touch. So she wasn't aware of Taylor Swift until the last couple of years. Apparently, she says this psyop was done once before. She shows that photo of Taylor Swift with the badges of Biden. Like you said, it was a pretty small psyop.
Yes.
It had no impact.
Yeah.
She describes the Super Bowl and Taylor Swift as bread and circuses on steroids. Yeah, it's entertainment.
Yes.
And sports.
And that's not new.
By definition, that's bread and circuses.
Yeah.
Whereas you're meant to be a news report and you just spent 6 minutes on this shit. She says that the entirety of sports is a psyop. Does she know what psyop is? Does she understand what a psyop is?
Know what sports
It's
are.
not sports.
Yes.
How is Taylor Swift a Trojan horse to get Soros? Does she know what a Trojan horse is? No. This doesn't who are the Hollywood elites, according to her, that are propping up Taylor Swift, and how? She's a country singer. What Hollywood elites prop up? Is Tom Cruise propping her? I don't understand. And finally, she ends with boycott her. Boycott them. Boycott what? The NFL? Taylor Swift? For what? For what? Having a boyfriend? I don't understand what the boycott's for. She hasn't even endorsed Biden. She's done nothing.
Maybe what's coming is, like, there have been all of these attempts over the last few years to create parallel conservative institutions. And we know about all of the most famous examples of this, but there are some really weird ones as well. Like, are you aware of Chile, the conservative response to Bluey?
No.
Yeah. It's...
Oh, actually, I am. The chinchilla.
Yes.
From Daily Wire.
It's the
Yeah.
animation looks creepily, uncanny, sort of like this off version of Bluey.
Yeah.
But it's this conservative family of chinchillas who homeschool their kids and teach them about medieval European history.
Yeah.
What we need is the Conservative Football League.
Oh, that's good.
You can't call it the CFL because that's the Canadian Football League.
They don't need conservative celebrities. They've already got them. They've got Scott Baio. They've got Gérard Carano from The Mandalorian.
Yep.
They've got Tim Allen.
Yeah.
There's a spoil for choice of celebrities.
Yeah. And, Aaron Rodgers, he's...
Kid Rock. They got Kid Rock.
Beginning to approach washed-up status in the NFL. He can be the starting quarterback for the, Fredericksburg Freedom or something.
Sure.
Yeah.
Why not? It's good. Oh, sorry. I should just say.
Yeah.
I just want to just back over the last 17 seconds of that clip I just played.
Yeah.
But also, final question: why is she so angry? Anyway,
actually, what I want to know
yeah,
is, I'm sure that's a Maryland accent. That is
You
a
were obsessed with that. when we were watching
comically Maryland accent. She is a character from a John Waters movie.
it. Okay.
Unfortunately, I can't find anything out about this because she does not warrant a Wikipedia page, apparently.
Oh, I'm sure she's going to earn one soon.
Richard Cook needs to look into that.
I want to just back over
Yeah.
this 17 seconds.
Okay.
Just watch this.
Certainly be interesting to watch what happens over the next 8 months. Let's see who ends up winning the Super Bowl and if there's a major presidential endorsement coming from an artificially, culturally propped up couple this fall. Only time will tell. But don't forget who warned you and predicted it before it happens.
Yeah, Vivek Ramaswamy.
Yes!
Plagiarism.
She literally ripped him
That's
off
plagiarism.
word for word.
That is
and
absolute
then
plagiarism.
took credit for it.
Any definition of plagiarism.
Bill Ackman, get onto this case right now. I couldn't believe it.
Yes.
What cheek. She didn't just rip him off word for word
No,
and then took credit for it. She did the two thumbs pointing at her.
Yeah. And like, who else would use the phrase artificially, culturally propped up? Anyway,
Yes.
by the way, on that plagiarism point,
Yes.
did I mention? So John McWhorter actually said very articulately and concisely in an article what I completely rambled on a couple of weeks ago, saying that the term plagiarism is so broad it can mean quite a lot of different things.
Yeah.
I recommend that article, plus his follow-up article the next week about when it is that we actually need new language for things. But just, okay.
I will put them in the blurb.
On
You
this
have a look
point-
at them. You have to send them to me.
Yes, on this point, finally, the idea that the Kansas City Chiefs needed any help getting to this point
Yeah.
is absolutely ludicrous. Okay, so the Kansas City Chiefs, they won the Super Bowl in, I think, 2020. That was the last pre-COVID Super Bowl. Spectacular comeback against the 49ers in this game. This Super Bowl that's coming is a replay of that. They won again last year. People might remember they're an extremely good team. They've got Andy Reid, regarded as one of the best coaches of all time. They've got Patrick Mahomes, who has the potential to be an absolutely epochal quarterback. They're not strong in every department, but their defense was incredibly good against the Baltimore Ravens last week. Maybe if my theory that she's from Maryland is correct, maybe that's why. Maybe that's why she's so pissed off. It would not be any surprise if the Chiefs won this game. But just the final little irony that I want to point out.
Yeah.
The Kansas City Chiefs are one of a handful of teams that play in a state that has voted Republican every year since 2000.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of the few genuine red state teams. Okay, Kansas City, by the way, or at least the part of Kansas City that they play in, is Missouri. Don't make the same mistake as Donald Trump, who congratulated the great state of Kansas when they won in 2020. Right, Missouri voted Republican every year since 2020. Of all the other states that have NFL teams, I think that only Texas, who has the Houston Texans and the Dallas Cowboys, and Louisiana, that has the New Orleans Saints, can actually claim that. I think that every other state that has an NFL team voted for Obama at least once.
That's interesting.
Even Indiana, the Indianapolis Colts. Oh, sorry, the exception to that is Arizona, never voted for Obama.
But vote for Biden.
But did vote for Biden last time around. Or Georgia as well, never voted for Obama, but did vote for Biden last time around.
That's interesting.
This is one of the reddest of the red state teams. This is a team that gets congratulations from Josh Hawley when they win the Super Bowl. And who are they playing against? Who, Chaz?
San Francisco.
The San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah.
Do you know what San Francisco's Major League Cricket team is called? The Unicorns, for fuck's sake. This is not a team that red state America should be rooting for.
Well, DC Drano is rooting for them.
DC Drano. What does DC Drano have to say?
DC Drano
Yes.
is a guy with 1.3 million Twitter followers.
Okay, right.
He says for 2 weeks, 99% of America will be 49ers fans. But in return, you must defeat the Chiefs. If you don't, Mr. Pfizer and his girlfriend are going to tour the country as world champions, he puts in inverted commas, because they're artificially, culturally propped up, helping elect Joe Biden. World War III will likely follow in a second Biden term, and millions will die. The fate of the free world rests upon your shoulders.
Wow. Well, that's a lot to put on Brock Purdy, the 49ers quarterback, who can be very good, but is not always completely consistent. By the way, I've also got to mention the poor Detroit Lions, who were up 17 points against the 49ers at halftime. So much hope in the state of Michigan at that point that then got flushed away in the second half, where the 49ers did show that they're a very good team. I think they're going to be the favourites heading into the Super Bowl, but I'm on the Chiefs.
Fair enough. Okay, I'm not going to comment on the actual Super Bowl.
Okay.
I am going to comment a little bit more on this, though, just a
Yes.
little bit, even though we've done a pretty good job on it.
Okay.
I'm just going to note
Yep.
that Alison Steinberg is not the only person who ripped off the culturally, what was it, culturally?
Artificially culturally propped up. My
artificially-
God, has there ever been a stupider sentence that's been
Artificially
plagiarised?
culturally propped up couple. That's it. That's it. It is a stupid sentence, but so many people have plagiarized it. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And everyone is using the phrase at each other.
Yeah.
And they're all liking each other and giving each other thumbs up and then quoting each other. And even though they just said it themselves, it's honestly, it's like the human centipede of culture war. They're just all just eating each other's shit and then just sharing the next person. It's incredible. It's everywhere. But I just want to make a couple of comments, which is, first of all, we've explained that this conspiracy doesn't make a lot of sense, but I just want to add a couple more reasons why, just in case you're taking it seriously. I don't think you are.
Yeah.
Leaving aside that it would be impossible to artificially make a singer the biggest singer in the world. I don't know how you do that.
No.
By making you at home like her more, how with brain control. I don't know how they rigged the Super Bowl either, for that matter.
No.
Because that's part of this theory. They're going to rig the Super Bowl.
Yes, yeah.
Why do they need to do that, though? Is Kelsey and Taylor Swift going to be a bigger cultural force if he wins a Super Bowl? No.
He's already won 2.
That's right. They're already maximum.
Yeah.
Taylor Swift is plenty big enough to appeal to young voters without Travis Kelsey, without the Super Bowl. She doesn't need that.
Yes.
Right? Also, if they can make anyone the biggest singer in the world with their Psyop, why make Joe Biden the biggest singer in the world?
Yes.
Just cut the middleman. Just make him Taylor Swift. Like let's test out their powers of Psyopness. Also, if they had this power, that they could do all these things.
Yeah.
Why, of all the people would they do it for? Would they do it for Joe Biden, who's 150 years old? They could pick anyone to do it for. Why would they do it for him? It doesn't make sense. And who are these people who are going to rig the Super Bowl and who made Taylor Swift huge? The DNC? The Pentagon? Soros? Did George Soros make Taylor Swift massive? How?
Can these people who can't even competently run a cannibal pizza parlor rig the Super Bowl?
Well, I was going to say, along those lines, if it's the Pentagon, how come the Pentagon can't win a war? How come the Pentagon can't do anything in military campaigns, but they can do this, pull off this psyop?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just one more thing on the Soros thing.
Yeah.
Soros bought Taylor Swift's back catalogue. It really pissed her off.
Yes.
We saw the quote.
Yes, yeah.
So she starts working for him? What? What's going on? All right, anyway, it's stupid.
Yes. Artificially culturally propped up. This reminds me, the first ever plagiarism case I ever saw was when I was a teaching assistant at the University of Michigan. And this was in a course on the sociology of sports.
Yeah.
And I had a student who actually confessed his plagiarism to me. He said, I need to meet you. I've got, I've done something really bad. And I was worried that he was going to tell me about a crime he committed or something. But no, he said, that paper that I handed in, he said the entire thing was plagiarized. And I remember I never, ever would have picked that as plagiarized because I just remember looking at the first line, which was, sports have been with us ever since Neanderthals roamed the green earth. I never would have thought that was plagiarized.
Was that plagiarized from Alison Steinberg?
I don't know who he played.
Maybe Ramaswamy.
That was like 14 years ago. I still Google search that phrase sometimes to see if I can find where that was plagiarized from. But it's like, if you're going to plagiarize something good. That's just my plea.
Fair enough. Okay, I just saying, realize something just when you just when you're talking that. First of all, I I should just acknowledge that this is actually really bad. And this is, I think, part of what this is about.
Yeah.
It's a really bad year for the online cultural right with their go woke, go broke thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because Taylor Swift has become just massive.
Yes.
Yeah, Travis Kelce, obviously. Barbie.
Yes.
Biggest movie in the world.
Yeah.
They were death riding that so hard when that came out. So it's been a bad year for them. So I think it's driven them a bit crazy.
And meanwhile, Elon Musk is kind of proving the opposite.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So they don't like that.
Yeah.
So we just should acknowledge and feel for them.
Okay.
Secondly, my two favorite bits about this, I almost forgot. First of
Yes.
all, Trump.
Yeah.
The reason why Trump has a problem with Taylor Swift, did you hear this?
No.
Because he's not into the conspiracy theory, but he doesn't like Taylor Swift much.
Yes.
Apparently, he's annoyed at Swift because, quote, it obviously made no sense that he wasn't named Times Person of the Year in 2023. For what? He did nothing but get indicted in 2023. He still thought, I should be the Person of the Year. He was really angry.
That's awesome. I was expecting him to dispute one of her Grammys or something. Like, no, that should have gone to the Andrew Lloyd Webber Greatest Hits CD or something. Okay,
He
right.
should have been Person of the Year. But the most laughable clip of all,
Yes.
here, I've got just queued up for you here, okay? The lack of self-awareness of these people is incredible.
Yes.
The critique here is so obvious, I won't even make it.
Okay.
I'm just going to play the clip,
Yep.
and I'll just say 4 words after that,
Okay.
okay? This is one of Trump's biggest fans, Newsmax's Greg Kelly. This is what
Okay.
he has to say.
Yeah.
I kind of have a problem, though, with the hardcore Taylor Swift fans. They are totally over the top, worshiping this woman. Have you seen any of the pictures of her in concert? I wouldn't go myself. I don't do that kind of thing anymore. But I think what they call it is they're elevating her to an idol, idolatry. This is a little bit what idolatry, I think, looks like, and you're not supposed to do that. In fact, if you look it up in the Bible, it's a sin.
I'm going to
Wow.
say 4 words.
Yeah.
CPAC, golden Trump statue. That's it. Dave? Okay. All right.
It all needs to be Amalek, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Speaking of lack of self-awareness, how long have we gone already?
We have gone 2 hours and 10 minutes.
No, that's not counting the 6 minutes that we've added with.
That's
the-
right. That's
the
right.
clip.
That's right. Can we go 15 more? No. I'm just desperate.
Chaz, we don't have time to do the entire immigration debate this week.
Not the entire immigration debate. I just wanted to do the Shelby Park bit, and that's it. It's just because there's so much of it, and the Shelby Park's going to be out of date very soon, and we can talk about the other stuff next week.
Well, I need to go.
Okay. I tell you what. So we're going to do one of those ones where I just tell you guys quickly after Dave goes. So what we should do is Dave's not going to like this. Our editor Dave is definitely not going to like this. But we're just queuing up so much. Yeah, like and we haven't got like a Chevron. There's the LNG stuff.
A lot of stuff to
There's
talk
immigrant.
about.
Yeah. So
Yes.
so I'll get at least the Shelby Park stuff. Then we can talk about the immigration legislation, which is only. It's not. We're not going to hear the details till the weekend. So that's okay for next
we'll
week.
do that next week.
Okay. All right. Okay. So you say goodbye.
Okay, stay peppy, everyone.
You stay peppy, Dave. Now you guys stay there. Here's the background. There's been 302,000 interceptions. See you, Dave. In December, most ever. That's the same number as the 303,000 interceptions in the whole of the fiscal year 2017. That's a lot of interceptions. Border Patrol arrested 19 people on the FBI terror watch list in December. That's 50 since October. Yeah, and that's that kind of stuff that worries people, the FBI terror watch list. Blue staters are getting pissed about all this. New York and Chicago citizens are starting to sound like red staters at the moment with how much they're hating all the illegal immigrants being dealt with in their cities. That's partly because of Greg Abbott, the Texas governor, has been busing them in, but only partly. A lot of them just go there. And while it was a good political tactic from him to bust them in because it gave him a lot of credit, he only sent a small fraction of the immigrants who've got going there, and all the migrants he sent were going to those cities anyway. So overall, he might not have even increased the numbers of migrants going to those cities. They're just a lot of migrants at the moment going everywhere, but in particular to places like New York. So they're under pressure. The polls are not good as far as immigration goes in Biden. There's a number of polls finding immigration becoming a more important issue to voters than the economy. There have been 2 so far, both minor polling companies, but watch that space. That's going to change, I suspect, soon. There's going to be more and more of them. You know what? I just got called by John Barron. This is the first time this has ever happened, demanding I go downstairs to the edit. I'm running so late. So I'm going to do the rest of this on Zoom later on. So I'll see you after the white flash on Zoom. Okay, we're back after the white flash. We have finished the edit of Planet America's Friday edition. As you can see, I'm still in the edit suite here. I've got John looking over my shoulder, apparently horrified by the fact that I'm continuing on with PEP by myself. But I just want to finish off at least part of this immigration section, mainly because I promised I would talk about immigration on Planet America about 5 times. So I really should talk about immigration. I was talking about polling. Now, the CBS had a poll that back in September, they found 55% of people said that border policy should be tougher. 19% said it should be easier. Well, more gentler, I guess. Now, 63% say it should be tougher and 15% say it should be easier. And ABC Washington Post had a poll recently where Biden got an 18% approval on immigration. Okay, so this is polling really badly for Trump. It's polling great for Trump, polling badly for Biden, and that's why Trump wants to make it his main issue. I mean, he's done this before. Back in, you'll recall, 2018, he tried to make the election about immigration. In 2022, Republicans tried to briefly as well. It is a go-to for them, but right now they've got good reason to go to it. And Republicans just can't talk about it enough. So let's take us to Greg Abbott. He's the Texas governor. He decided to make this his signature issue, possibly for a future presidential run. Essentially, his attitude for a while now has been, if the feds won't secure the border, he will. Texas is on the border. He's been kind of focusing on, well, before this, obviously, there was a bit where him busing all the migrants to New York and Chicago to try and make immigration more a front of mind issue for most of America. And lately, he's been focusing on a small area called Eagle Pass, where Shelby Park in Eagle Pass in particular, where a very large number of migrants come through. And it's also where the feds like to process the migrants. It's got a large area they can use as a staging area that they can process them and send them through. Firstly, Greg Abbott started putting up a very large amount of conspicuous concertina wire along the riverbank for about 3 miles along this park. This was annoying to Border Patrol because, as I said, this is where they like to process migrants, and the concertina wire interfered with their access to the river. And migrants were getting hurt by it as well. The Border Patrol started to cut the razor wire in parts to stop migrants being hurt by it. They would then let the migrants in and process them. As the law describes, they need to be processed. Once you get onto American land, you have the right to request asylum, and Greg Abbott can't change that. That's the law. Texas accused the Border Patrol of conspiring with illegal immigrants, and he took them to court. This is the case, the Department of Homeland Security versus Texas. Texas sued the feds for the destruction of state property, and the district court said that the feds had sovereign immunity, so they could destroy the property if they wanted to. But the Fifth Circuit, remember they're the really conservative Court of Appeals that they often get overturned by Supreme Court. They sided with Texas, at least temporarily. They said no cutting the wire except in a medical emergency. It wasn't the full Fifth Circuit. It was a 2-1 panel, 2 Trump judges versus 1 W. Bush judge. The 2 Trump judges sided with Texas. Now, to be clear, not a good ruling. The federal government, I think, pretty clearly has authority over the state government when it comes to policing the border. in particular in the 25-mile zone from the border, the federal government the law says they have to get access to those areas. And we've seen the Supreme Court rule this way many times. But that was the Fifth Circuit decision. They issued an injunction barring border agents from cutting through the wire, except in the case of medical emergencies. Meanwhile, Greg Abbott passed a state law which allowed Texas to make arrests for criminal trespass and then deport the illegal immigrants. Now, that's a federal function. Texas is not meant to be doing that. But a 2012 Supreme Court decision upheld that. In Arizona versus the United States, it upheld that state actions to enforce federal immigration laws are not allowed. But that case is moving through the courts at the moment as well. It hasn't been resolved yet. We'll find out what happens. I think Texas will lose that case. But nevertheless, Texas then upped the stakes a little bit more by seizing the entirety of Shelby Park at Eagle Pass, and they didn't allow the feds to enter at all. Not just messing with their access to the river, they just banned them from the park entirely. I remind you, the law explicitly grants the Border Patrol the right to access all land within 25 miles of the border. It also requires border agents to inspect, process, arrest, and detain migrants on U.S. soil, and the Texas Guard isn't letting them do either. The Border Patrol tried to monitor the area by boat, but the Texas Guard put a chain around the gate to the boat ramp, so then the border agents couldn't use it. So now Texas is arresting and deporting migrants, it's bouncing migrants, it's banning the federal government access to the area. All of this is usurping federal authority. So the Department of Justice sued Texas about all these things, and it was waiting for the Supreme Court to respond in some respect. And a few weeks back, the DOJ added one more filing. This is about what John and I talked about on the show briefly, and he got the wrong information. So I want to make sure you know what's going on here. This is what the White House said happened in the incident. Tragically, a woman and 2 children drowned last night in the Shelby Park area of Eagle Pass, which was commandeered by the state of Texas earlier this week. In responding to a distress call from the Mexican government, Border Patrol agents were physically barred by Texas officials from entering the area. So they said that someone died because they were barred from helping them out. Henry Cuellar, who's a Democrat congressman, he said more. He said that Border Patrol attempted to contact the Texas Military Department, the Texas National Guard, and DPS command post by telephone to relay the information, but they were unsuccessful. Border Patrol agents then made physical contact with the Texas Military Department and the Texas National Guard at the Shelby Park entrance gate and verbally relayed the information. However, Texas Military Department soldiers stated they would not grant access to the migrants, even in the event of an emergency, and that they would send a soldier to investigate the situation. This became a huge news story because of, in particular, they tied it to Greg Abbott making a comment the week earlier where he'd said, the only thing we're not doing is shooting people who come across the border, because of course the Biden administration would charge us with murder. People said, oh, look how cruel he is, and now people are dying on his watch because he won't let the feds save them. Texas, though, had a different story. Texas said that when Border Patrol agents requested access, the migrants had already drowned, adding that claims that had prevented the agents from saving them were wholly inaccurate. Next day they had more. They said Texas Military Department had a unit in the vicinity of the boat ramp and actively searched the river with lights and night vision goggles. No migrants were observed. At approximately 9:45 p.m., the Texas Military Department observed a group of Mexican authorities responding to an incident on the Mexico side of the riverbank. Texas Military Department reported their observations back to Border Patrol, and they confirmed that the Mexican authorities required no additional assistance. At no time did Texas Military Department security personnel along the river observe any distressed migrants, nor did Texas Military Department turn back any illegal immigrants from the US during this period. Also, at no point was Texas Military Department made aware of any bodies in the area of Shelby Park, nor was it made aware of any bodies being discovered in the US side of the border regarding this situation. So they got a different story. Who's telling the truth? Turns out there were two groups of people. This is the DOJ's filing, the Federal Department of Justice's filing in the case. When they finally got some facts, this is what they reported to the judge under oath. On January 12, 2024, at approximately 9 p.m., Mexican officials advised Border Patrol of two migrants in distress on the US side of the river in the area near the Shelby Park boat ramp. Mexican officials also informed Border Patrol that three migrants, one woman and two children, had drowned at approximately 8 p.m. in the same area. So it was at 9 p.m. that the Mexican officials advised Border Patrol of two migrants in distress. At 8 p.m., they found out that one woman and two children had drowned. An acting supervisory Border Patrol agent went to the Shelby Park entrance gate and informed the guardsmen from the Texas National Guard stationed there of the drowned migrants and the migrants in distress. Speaking through the closed gate, the guardsmen refused to let the acting supervisor enter because they had been ordered not to allow Border Patrol access to the park. The following day, Mexican officials confirmed to Border Patrol that the two migrants who Mexican officials had reported were in distress on the US side had attempted to return to Mexico and were rescued by a Mexican government airboat while suffering from hypothermia. Mexican officials also confirmed they had recovered the bodies of the three drowned migrants and had rescued two additional migrants who had attempted to cross that night. So, Texas did not stop Border Patrol from rescuing people who then died. They did, however, stop Border Patrol from rescuing other people who survived, who in the end swam back to Mexico and were rescued by Mexico. That's still shit from Texas. So sure, no one died, but it's still shit. Then, after all that, the Supreme Court responded about the Concertina wire. They overruled the Fifth Circuit 5-4. John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett joined the Libs to outrule the four other conservatives. They said that the feds can remove parts of the barbed wire fence along the southern border. The only surprise is that four of the conservatives didn't say that. Well, let's see their reasoning, because that is just a temporary ruling. They're going to hear the case eventually, properly. But note, the Supreme Court did not say that Texas is not allowed to install barbed wire, just that the feds can remove it. See, that's an important distinction. And yeah, the full case is going to be heard eventually. And so in response to this, Texas, by the way, the feds didn't cut any more wire after that came down. They were told they had the right, and they reserved that right, but they didn't use it. Regardless, Texas added a whole bunch more concertina wire. Like, they just covered the place with concertina wire, which was a bit childish. Once again, I want to emphasize the Supreme Court said nothing to Texas. They just said the feds were allowed to cut the wire. So Texas didn't need to do anything. They didn't need to add wire. They didn't need to do anything. But what they and the whole conservative world did at that point was to escalate as hard as they could anyway. This was the Texas response. Greg Abbott sent a letter saying, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and the other visionaries who wrote the US Constitution foresaw that states should not be left to the mercy of a lawless president who does nothing to stop external threats like cartels smuggling millions of illegal immigrants across the border. The failure of the Biden administration to fulfill the duties imposed by Article 4 has triggered Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3, which reserves to this state the right of self-defense. Okay, so what's Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3? It says, no state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duty of tonnage, keep troops, or ships of war in time of peace, enter into any agreement or compact with another state or with a foreign power or engage in war unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger as will not admit of delay. So, there's a lot of words, a lot of ancient words. The takeaway is a state can engage in war if it's been invaded. That's the key bit. And Abbott declared they were being invaded. So he could start doing warlike things like putting up concertina wire and the federal government couldn't stop him. That was his argument. He said that over 6 million illegal aliens had entered Texas through its southern border. By the way, it's 6 million for the whole border, not for Texas, not just for Texas. But anyway. Also, I should say 2.4 million of those 6 million were let into the country for the entire nation. The rest were bounced. And also, even if there was 100 million of them, that's not invasion. People backpacking into America is not an invasion. James Madison in 1800 rejected that invasion refers to non-citizens. He said, quote, invasion is an operation of war. In Federalist 43, he said the invasion clause offered protection in situations wherein a state is exposed to armed hostility from another political entity. So it was pretty clear what James Madison thought, the draft of the Constitution. The Supreme Court has upheld that meaning as well. In 1996, California also explicitly made exactly the same legal argument. It was rejected by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and the Supreme Court saw no reason to overturn that. And by the way, Abbott actually declared that invasion, not now, back in November 2022. There have been a lot of operations since then, but Abbott and his cronies have fought 24 public records requests from the news organizations trying to find out what those operations have achieved. It seems like they don't want people to know what they've achieved. I wonder why. I'll tell you this though, while these operations have been going on, the number of interceptions has increased a lot. Also, it doesn't make sense, this logic from Greg Abbott. If Greg Abbott can unilaterally declare an invasion based on illegal immigration and drug smuggling, then that means Texas can declare war on Mexico anytime they like, because there's always drug smuggling and illegal immigration. The other argument that Texas made was about the 25-mile thing I said, about how the federal government controls 25 miles from the boundary, from the border, that is. Well, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton addressed that. He said the federal statute that authorized U.S. Border Patrol warrantless access to land within 25 miles of the border expressly provides that such access is, quote, for the purpose of patrolling the border to prevent the illegal entry of aliens into the United States. And he says they're not preventing illegal entry. So therefore, they shouldn't get that 25 miles, according to the law. That's not true. First, they are preventing illegal entry. They're just not preventing entry. They're processing them. They're legally there. Those migrants who come over, they become 100% legal. That's an important distinction to make. What they don't want is entry. That's what Greg Abbott doesn't want. That's what the Conservatives don't want. They're trying to cut down immigration numbers, not illegal immigration numbers. So what happened then? The Supreme Court had brought down a ruling which didn't affect Texas. Texas got arced up about it, said that implied that the Supreme Court was cracking down on them when the Supreme Court wasn't at all. What happened? A bunch of righties backed him up. That's what happened. Chip Roy, Congressman Chip Roy says, it's like if someone's breaking into your house and the court says, oh, sorry, you can't defend yourself. What do you tell the court? You tell the court to go to hell. You defend yourself and then figure it out later. Next day, Chip Roy said, I say this respectfully. I say it with the fear of what I'm saying. I do not want to live in a post-constitutional world, but this court is pushing our hand. The court needs to know that. I want them to feel the pressure. Because if they're political animals, they need to know it. We were out there defending Amy Coney Barrett when her house was being protested. We said that the law should be enforced to protect her. Where is she when the people of Texas need to be protected? Totally MIA. Clay Higgins, another congressman, said, the feds are staging a civil war and Texas should stand their ground. Feds have done nothing. They've done nothing. 25 Republican governors sent a statement saying President Biden and his administration have left Americans in our country completely vulnerable to unprecedented illegal immigration pouring across the southern border. Instead of upholding the rule of law and securing the border, the Biden administration has attacked and sued Texas for stepping up to protect American citizens from historic levels of illegal immigrants, deadly drugs like fentanyl, and terrorists entering our country. We stand in solidarity with our fellow Governor Greg Abbott and the state of Texas in utilizing every tool and strategy, including razor wire fences, to secure the border. Trump tried to egg them on even more. He said, we encourage all willing states to deploy their guards to Texas to prevent the entry of illegals. Some of them have. So what did the left do in response? Well, this is the internet. So they start escalating right back. They didn't reply by saying, well, what are you going on about? The Supreme Court the Supreme Court's doing nothing. The feds are doing nothing. You're on your own. Like, no one's complaining. No, they didn't say that. They said that Abbott was defying the Supreme Court. Even though he was pushing against an open door, he wasn't defying the Supreme Court at all. Beto O'Rourke tweeted out, Abbott's using their Texas Guard to defy a Supreme Court ruling. When Governor Faubus did this in 1957, Eisenhower federalized the Arkansas Guard to ensure compliance with the law. Biden must follow this example of bold, decisive leadership to end this crisis before it gets worse. By the way, Beto was right. The feds can federalize the National Guard anytime they want. National Guard is actually supposed to be there for the feds. Steve Doocy made this point quite well on Fox, that the states were talking about sending all their National Guards down. They could have all gathered on the southern border and then Biden could have federalized them to help him. I hadn't really thought that through. But anyway, why is this a problem? The reason why this is a problem is because it's all performative bullshit. But it is acclimatizing people to getting ready to ignore the Supreme Court. Like, there's a lot of talk about ignoring the Supreme Court at the moment. And that scares me because the time is coming when a political leader is going to ask his supporters to back him in or her in ignoring the Supreme Court. And it's dangerous that the precedent's been set now and it doesn't need to be. Like, there's no need for this. They are escalating the rhetoric unnecessarily just to ramp up the issue for an election. In fact, now I think about it, the time may come when it's opposite, when Trump is being begged by his supporters to ignore the Supreme Court. Are you confident that he won't come around? I'm not. At the same time, there's a convoy of truckers that are coming. Oh my God, this convoy of truckers. They're a group called Take Our Border Back. They're organizing hundreds of trucks to come to the border to defend it, apparently. Defend the border with trucks. They haven't watched too much Duel. Their website calls for, quote, all active and retired law enforcement and military veterans, all active and retired law enforcement and military, veterans, mama bears. I don't think we need mama bears. Anyway, mama bears, elected officials, business owners, ranchers, truckers, bikers, media, and law-abiding, freedom-loving Americans. Wants them all to join in. This is a biblical, monumental moment that's been put together by God, one organizer said. Another said, we are besieged on all sides by dark forces of evil. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. It's time for the remnant to rise. Why are these people always driving trucks or bikes? Why don't they ever drive cars? I don't get that. So we now have unspecified numbers of National Guardsmen who may be at one point in time controlled by Biden coming down to the border to do I don't know what. We've got vigilantes coming down to the border, mama bears, to apparently defend it. That doesn't sound good. It's a bit of a mess, and all of it is performative and unnecessary and just being done to heighten the issue for an election campaign. What could possibly go wrong? Okay, I think I've done enough for now. It's like a 2.5 hour podcast. That's long enough. I've at least wiped some of the immigration section. I'll continue with more of the immigration section, the new legislation, my view on the bits that need to be fixed and whether the legislation does it in the next PEP, which will be next Friday. Look at poor old John there. He's frozen in horror at the fact I'm still going, so I really should get out of here. Thanks so much for hanging in there. And as you can see, did a lot of correspondence this week. If you've got questions, if you've got comments, if you've got corrections, just get into the comments of the YouTube or Facebook and I will address a number of them. And for the rest of you, I'll see you guys in a week's time. Till then, stay peppy.